Good afternoon and a warm welcome to all of you. This is Rakesh Rao, Executive Editor of Industrial Product Finder magazine, welcoming you all for the first Industrial Excellence Forum 2021. Before we begin today's proceeding, let me say a few words about IPF. Launched in 1972, Industrial Product Finder is today's one of the oldest and the most trusted brands by the readers and the advertisers in industrial publication space in India. IPF is published by ASAP Info Global Group, which is known for its wide range of publications in the construction and engineering space like Construction World, Equipment India, Indian Cement Review, Indian Textile Journal, and Infrastructure Today. Over the years, readers' faith in IPF has increased, which has motivated us to innovate in the terms of editorial content and delivery platform like print, online events, awards, virtual shows, videos, etc. Every month, IPF reaches to more than 60,000 readers through its magazine and website, which offers an assortment of news, views, interviews, well-researched articles, and product information. Talking about innovation quotient, IPF now has industrial news on WhatsApp, that is iNow. For readers who wants to update on Move, it is easy to subscribe iNow. Just give a missed call on 84228 74016. I repeat, just give a missed call on 84228 74016 and save the number to continue to receive the updates. Coming back to today's agenda, after the overwhelming response received for IPF Industrial Excellence Awards for the last 4 years, IPF today is hosting its first virtual Industrial Excellence Forum 2021 with an apt theme of engineering growth despite COVID. The event will discuss strategies for manufacturing sector and SMEs to thrive in the post-COVID marketplace in the two panel discussion that are scheduled for today. This will be followed with the fifth IPF Industrial Excellence Awards, which will recognize the contribution of people, processes, and products in driving the industry forward. Before moving on, we would like to express our gratitude to our knowledge partner, Care Ratings, and exchange partner, National Stock Exchange. We would also like to thank our association partners, the Indian Institute of Welding, then Federation of Associations of Maharashtra, Manufacturers Association of Information Technology, that is MAIT, and All India Association of Industries for extending their support to this event. 2020 was certainly an unusual year for industries across the world, including India. There is no question that this unusual time will carry over into 2021. Unusual doesn't necessarily mean bad, it just means different. Often hidden within these differences are opportunities. This brings us to our first panel discussion titled Boardroom Strategy to Face New Normal. The discussion will focus on the changing market conditions and the ways to adapt to the new ways of doing business. I would like to request Mr. Subodh Jindal, Global CEO, Steer Engineering, to moderate this very relevant discussion. Mr. Subodh Jindal is a senior executive with 25 years of professional experience and has worked with some of the leading global organizations like 3M, Stanley Black and Decker, and Thermo Fisher Scientific. He is also a serial entrepreneur with two startups in EdTech space. Over to you, Mr. Jindal.
Thank you, Mr. Rakesh. And I would like to, if you can have me on the camera on. Thank you. Sure, that's nice. Thank you, Rakesh, for this. I would like to introduce our panelists in detail. Just a minute. So first one is Mr. Sunil Kumar, President Henkel India, effective October 2020. In addition to his current role, he is also a regional business director for the packaging SBU for India, Middle East, and Africa. He started his career with Carborundum unit in 1990, and then he worked for more than 2 decades with Castrol in various verticals, especially in the industrial side. Our next panelist, very happy to introduce Dr. Babu Padmanabhan. He is an engineer, he is an entrepreneur, he is a researcher, an author, and a founder and managing director for the Steel Engineering. He believes in applying science and technology in materials to improve their properties and functionality for the overall betterment of the mankind. He has been working tirelessly to provide some pioneering work in processing of plastics and polymer, which has its application in terms of technology in pharmaceutical, food, nutraceuticals, and biomaterials. Welcome, Dr. Babu and Mr. Sunil. Our third panelist is Mr. Biswajyoti Mandal. He is currently Vice President and Head Technology at Schaeffler, India. He was responsible for evaluating and maintaining technology solutions and bring the technology support for the new products and usage, especially for the EV and for the hydrogen fuel cells businesses. He has rich experience of more than 27 years in the technology field, and he has earlier worked with John Deere and also with the farm mechanization business of Mahindra & Mahindra. Last but not the least, I'm very happy to have our fourth panelist, Mr. Indradev Babu, founder and managing director of UCAM Private Limited. He's a mechanical engineer. He began his career with Bharat Electronics in 1986. He became the entrepreneur. He's also the current president of IMTMA, which is Indian Machine Tools Manufacturing Association. So welcome all, and really happy to have you on this panel, which is boardroom strategies to face new normal. So just saying that while the economy is showing signs of revival in the Q3 and Q4 of 2020, the circumstances are not the same like before. We continue to have issues like uncertainty in demand, supply side tantrums, labor availability, financial constraints, etc. And these are here for stay for some time. The topic is how the top management need to do and what they need to do in terms of right decision at the right time. So let me start with Mr. Sunil Kumar, if I can ask you a question in terms of as the industries regrow after the COVID-19, and I was saying COVID after the COVID-19 because we are in 2 days away from the vaccine rollout in India specifically. What are the key challenges before you as a company head and the industry at large for the growth?
Right. Thank you very much, Subodh, and very happy to be participating in this forum, and also warm welcome to all the industry fraternity who have joined today. So the COVID, as all of us know, is a global, situation and a challenge. And you're right, from tomorrow onwards, we are well poised into the vaccine program in India. So hence, I think the first and foremost, I would like to compliment the government of India for doing a fantastic effort in the last 9 months or so in really handling this so well. And definitely also in the same breath also to be complimented is the industry and all the people, because everybody understood the big picture and also started living this new ways of working or the new normal that we talk about, whether it is from the hygiene standards or using sanitizers and distancing and things like that. So I think that has overall helped. Now coming back to where we started and your question, The way I have tried to sort of think through this, and also at a leadership team together, is there is a challenge. Yes, all of us know, but I would like to flip it also by the other side of the same coin, as they say, is it seems to also have opened up opportunities. Okay, so what we have been trying to do at Henkel is what I will share with you as some insights in the last at least 8-9 months. When this challenge initially started off, and almost it became very clear that everybody has to work from home. Yeah, and this is what's going to be looking like the new way of working, and a new challenge in itself, because we are all used to meeting people face to face. The industry is used to face to face connections from us, etc. We quickly did a couple of things were importantly very different. One, we focused quite a bit into the e-learning part and the upskilling part. And I will say why this is also very important, keeping the future now in perspective, is in the current context, if people are not upskilled to this new challenges, then I think we would see that we are missing great time opportunities. I think that's number one. The second is we always had certain rules saying that this is how the industry works. And if we are very much focused, like, in our case, in value differentiation, we always used to feel that, we can do this only through face-to-face or visits. And whereas we crafted a very new way of trying to add value, through a virtual basis. This started, clearly bringing some new opportunities. Again, at the end of the day, whilst there's a challenge, also brought an opportunity. Last, before, I know I kind of, give an idea, is when we have to look into these situations, one of the things which we realized is that whatever we have been doing traditionally, we might have to definitely challenge internally whether, what else, we need to do out of the box. So as a culture, the innovation culture, or a culture of change, and a culture of, trying to look into beyond the normal is very important. Otherwise, we will not be able to face this new challenge which is coming. The new challenges also is bringing very new opportunities. And I'll end by giving one example of what we found in, at Henkel, or what we did amongst many is, we found that the e-commerce platform, let us say, really became a big boom during this 9 months time. And all of us are aware of it. We work very closely with the e-commerce companies, and we put ourselves very openly in these areas. And that has helped us really get us a good growth. So I conclude by basically saying that while there are challenges, I think it is important for the industry to also look inside our own selves and see that how we can, have a very strong mindset for change. And that will ensure that, we are not really too much worked up on the challenge, but we would be able to encash, very new opportunities at the end of the day.
Thanks, thanks, Mr. Sunil. And I think that's very, very valid point. You touched upon the e-commerce and thinking out of the box and trying to do some differentiation. Very right. At this juncture, if I can get in Mr. Indradev, and if you can unmute yourself and have your couple of initial thoughts on as we kind of restart the growth engine, what do you think, in your opinion, probably are the challenges which industry or the organizations face, or the CEO face?
Yeah, thank you very much. And greetings to all the listeners and the participants. And of course, thanks to IPF for this opportunity. I would like to echo one aspect what Mr. Sunil brought out, which is to look inwards. Basically the companies have actually regrouped and are moving forward, applying the lessons learned during the first 6 months of this financial year. Now, initially we had the lockdown, when the shock set in, and business became zero. And then the company started to think and the team started to work. And what really happened is that this gave a huge opportunity for companies to realign, refocus, and it gave an opportunity to look internally. So coupled with that, there is we all know that there is a steep rise in the demand side, okay, which has made the situation very progressive and vibrant for us. But you're talking about challenges. The challenges have shifted from the supply to the demand side. Where the capacity of supply chain and inflationary pressures that have crept in. Also, due to interesting reasons, there is a huge consumption of materials, particularly of the raw materials like steel, copper, aluminum, coming from, and it is said that it is mainly the consumption going into China. I don't know where the consumption is, and it is a global phenomena of the cost increase. And it is putting a spanner in the works of companies who want to take up the opportunities of the resurgent demand and make up for the losses in the first half. But I think as we said, the industries have to, what Sunil and has pointed out, industries have to look inwards to innovate cost-saving measures. While artfully, we have to take the customer along in managing our costs. But it's a very vibrant and competitive scenario. I think it's continuously fluid and changing. And how flexible are we? How aligned are we? How are we continuing to improve our processes and be more productive? The companies which are going to focus on this, they will be the winners for sure. And also, it is an opportunity for Indian companies to become more global. This is
absolutely right. Thanks, Mr. Indradev. That's for a very nice. I think some of the very critical and important point in terms of how do we continue to look inward, re-innovate ourselves, look out of the box, cost saving, but at the same time, you brought in the optimism that demand is increasing, and which is a good sign for the industry, and how Indian organization can take advantage of that. Thanks. Okay, I would like to now invite Dr. Babu Padmanabhan, and just to get your thoughts around, will the COVID-19 pandemic lead to any change in the way the business are being operating today?
Sure, Saboo. Again, thank you for inviting me here. Like Indradev was saying, it's all about demand and supply, and ASAP Group and IPF has been instrumental in building platforms to get these demand and supply met. So I want to congratulate them for all the years of hard work that's going on. And today is another big day for the group. So best wishes. You asked about that, would this pandemic, the COVID-19, lead to changes in the way business is carried out or operated? I imagine, all business deals with, a few things, and primarily how we engage with our employees, how we engage with our customers, and how we manage our operations. Right? So it is dealing with primarily three significant areas. And in terms of employee engagement, we heard already from the other panelists that there's a considerable change in, what is being done. There is work from home and so forth. But what I see in terms of employee engagement, like the IT majors, all companies, whether it's brick and mortar or information technology companies, are moving from an effort-based performance management to a outcome-based performance management, the result-based performance management. So earlier, when people show up at work, you have a completely different way of looking at what they deliver during their time at work. But I think with increasingly removed from work, it's more and more result-based management. So I see that as a fundamental change in the way business is operated today. And in terms of engaging with customers, apart from the fact that, webinars and video conferencing were the norm today in dealing with people face-to-face, conferencing is as good as flash meetings. And in terms of servicing, all of the remote tools are being even employed in a bigger manner. I think the pandemic has in fact brought not just families closer, and we know that, it has brought families, it's tighter now, but customers closer. And I can see that, it's no longer necessary to book appointments and wait to see people. You just call away and it's done face to face. I think all this Zoom calls and video conferencing has in fact brought people closer. And for businesses which have operated consumer focused, I'm talking about business to business, but even from a point of view of consumer focused companies, generally you have these in the modern trade, you front end it, you have your space and retail outlets, and there's a lot of money and time spent in trying to gauge what the response is. From the fact that, like we heard Sunil, I think a lot of e-commerce and the feedback cycle is far more conducive for introducing new products and ensuring that these products are actually being perceived correctly by the consumer. I do have a few thoughts about operation, but in the interest of time, I will just let maybe Mr. Mandal talk about it. I think clearly the pandemic has also disrupted supply chains and
That's right.
to pivot further to make sure that we make best use of the crisis. But over to you back, Saboo.
Thanks, Dr. Babu. I appreciate, I think, you bringing out some of the very good, important point in terms of bringing how the people are getting together and how we engage employees, customers, and the supply chain. So, now over to Mr. Biswamandal. If I can draw you in and get your initial thoughts, and then we move on to the next set of topic. Thank you.
Wonderful. I think I would like to thank first to IPF for organizing this important forum. I think the timing was very critical. And every company, the way we experiencing the businesses, we have a different set of working experiences because of the internal processes we have, which is completely different. The way we sell the product, the people, the culture, and so on and so forth. I think this forum has got a tremendous potential to learn from each other, to share some of the best practices that we have been following, because the businesses this type of we are undergoing for the first time. I think all the companies across the world for the last 100 years we have not seen these changes coming into the business. So this forum has kind of been trying to help us to get connected and share what is our view, how did we manage it well, what is not getting managed well. So for that, I'd like to thank IPF first. They have been doing a wonderful job. And with my due respect to all other eminent panel, all the members of the panel, my viewpoints are like this. I think this pandemic and the post on lockdown, this has taught us two very important parameters to executing the business, which I'm talking about uncertainty, right? That's one. Second is the unpredictability. So the first one is more from a market perspective. The environmental has changed and, customer is willing to spend more money or no. And since as a manufacturing company, we have to manufacture the product. We have to manufacture the product. We need to have inventory of the product and so on and so forth. So if the customer demand keeps changing day by day, so you are at a loss, you do not know whatever the initial planning production that you have made, you will go as a toss, right? So this has actually forced us, a behavioral changes with all people in the company, right? Our key focus is that how can we make the business lean, ensure that during this tough time, customer is not at all impacted, right? So can I work as one team in place of, each of us trying to bring the data from the market and then creating some confusion within the business to make progress in terms of manufacturing, production, and the supply chain and so on, right? Can we work as one team? Can we create a better synergy? The kind of production planning that we make, can we be 100% right? If not 100% right, can we go as close as possible, right? So that is kind of a unconsciously, we have learned this because of this current working environment. I think that is the practice, the way we have learned, we have experienced. I'm sure every company has also witnessed this experience as well. This is a wonderful thing that we have learned.
That's true.
So, yeah, so in a certain way, I would say that pandemic has actually taught us, okay, it's not only me, every company in the world, right? How we can learn the business, how we can run the business quite effectively when this unpredictability and uncertainty are the mantra in the marketplace, right? So that's what I'll probably put it that way. There are many things we have learned. And since we are into the panel and the people are joining to the call, that means all of us have sustained the business so far. And the time has come, how we can learn from each other so that we can pick up the best practices.
Thank you, Mr. Mandal. Appreciate, and I appreciate all the three other panelists for their opening remarks. And Pushkar, if you're listening now, can we have an audience poll around has COVID-19 led to? And the 4 choices will be displayed by Pushkar, and you can choose 2. I'll request all the participants on this call to please exercise their vote, and we'll have the results soon. And you have 30 seconds. So while participants are polling, I'll just read out the 4 options. Has COVID-19 led to increased emphasis on upscaling by the top management? Has it led to rise in cost of raw materials and components? Lesser employment opportunities due to slowdown in automation? Or is it increased adoption of automation? Of course, all the choices are relevant, but what we are looking at, what is the most relevant and how the people feel which are affected. And now we have the poll results, and I'll show you, speak about the poll results. So the almost 62% people in the call have seen increased adoption of automation as an impact or as an outcome of the COVID-19 situation. That's one. And the second most, which is 59% of the people who have participated, have talked about increased emphasis on upskilling by the top management. So upskilling and the increased adoption of the automation is coming as the number 2 choices, while the other 2 also scored very reasonably well, which is 31% on the rise in cost of raw material and components, and lesser employment opportunity due to slowdown and automation got around 24% of the votes. Thank you so much. And we move on. Okay. So the next topic is in terms of how the technology and R&D going to play the role post COVID-19 situation. And if may, I ask Dr. Babu to come again and say many experts believe automation will gain momentum, right? But is there a real threat to the employment or existing job given India's situation? We have seen some amount of record level of unemployment. How can India prepare for it? Given the fact there is still a large amount of unskilled, low-cost labor available in India. So is automation is a threat to unemployment? Dr. Babu.
Super. Again, one can really look at history and learn a lot, whether it's short-term impact, medium or long-term impact. And one draw would one parallel one can draw is to the banking sector. The banking sector went through tremendous automation roughly about 20 years ago, and the bank employees were quite worried about losing jobs at that time. But as all of us know, that it has created a tremendous win-win for both customers and the bankers themselves. So clearly, while like we heard Mr. Mandal say, the uncertainty or unpredictability of implementation is always concerning, but all one has to do is look into history and see, what perhaps in some way or the other, what effect it may have had. So the fact before us is the per capita GDP, the nominal, right? Not the PPP, not the purchase parity one, of India is around $2,100 per year per person, which is still, hardly about 8 of the world average. So we have a very long way to go. And what does it reflect? We don't have enough money to pay each other. Why we don't have enough money to pay each other? Because, we're doing mundane, menial jobs that can easily be done at a very high level of quality and productivity. We shouldn't be doing this. We should not be subjecting fellow citizens to doing jobs that doesn't pay, that overall our per capita GDP remains at 1/8 of the world's average. It's, I would say, sacrilege. It's completely wrong. And if jobs start playing well, just look at food sector. 20 times the growth is possible just in food sector for the services. If people can afford more, why would they take the trouble to cook at home? They would eat, just like in Tokyo, I don't think families cook a lot at home. They eat every meal outside. So each of these sectors have tremendous potential and create enormous employment, what we call as those so-called unskilled. You can imagine if there is a 20x growth in the food sector, food services sector, all of the so-called unemployable, unskilled people would find tremendous jobs there. So automation is a catalyst. It's not an impediment. It's not slowing down anything. It is what we need in this country today. We needed it a long time back, but unfortunately, some appropriate technology. And the most appropriate technology is always what is highest quality and highest productivity. There's no doubt about it.
Thank you, Dr. Babu. I think there's a lot of, you spoke with a lot of passion, and I believe this is very close to you, but some very, very relevant point that automation is an enabler and not an impediment. And I think that will go a long way. At this juncture, can I also now ask Mr. Indradev to share your thoughts about this in brief?
Yeah, thank you so much. Very interesting observations by Babu. What I have to share is that this is evolution of mankind. And we have to move, we can always go and look back and see how we have evolved. And automation is something that no one can stop. It has to happen. And that is the only way. And we are also seeing a very clear signs of growth of automation. But this is still very small percentage value terms. While we need to really be more automated, however, it's not that simple. It's a very complex situation on the ground. Particularly we in India, we are a developing world, and we have a population, we have resource constraints to move up the ladder. So while automation is, gets into place, adoption of automation, it needs several ecosystems to fall in place for automations to really move up. And it needs the skills for managing, implementation, and running this more complex systems. Human resources in India need to get ready for it. So while this happens, naturally the human resources will also adopt, they learn and catch up. And India needs to very much prepare and shift to this adaptation. In fact, Babu's point that automation, the thing is that we shouldn't be saying we shouldn't be feeling insecure that automation is going to take away jobs. Okay. But I guess if it happens overnight, surely we will have, but that is not feasible. So the two stakeholders, the government and the industry, need to hasten this process by upskilling and training the people, while policy framework to help capital investment needed for automation. So I think the MSME department has a sufficient budget, and also the Skill India is doing a lot of work in developing skill so that the automation happens. I think every industry leader wants to have his plan more automated, more smooth flow, while the government looking at how can we have a policy where more employment possibilities are there. I can't say that the government thinking is wrong. We will in talking about the PLI scheme, the whole philosophy of the performance linked incentive scheme of the government is about how much more employment happens. Today, the country needs employment.
Right, right.
That's the pain point. But at the same time, we need to compete and with China and the international world. So if you don't have competitive methods and systems in place, we're going to be left behind. So this is an evolution.
Got it.
And we are talking about $5 US dollar 5 trillion economy, and without automation, how can this ever happen? Okay.
No, that's very valid point, Mr. Indradev. Thank you so much. And I think both you and Dr. Babu highlighted about how automation is more of an enabler and expand the pie rather than, and what Mr. Indradev really impressed upon was it is a must and it's a part of evolution. Good, thank you. May now ask Mr. Mandal, how do you adopt a right automation strategy, maximize the benefit? Can SMEs also leverage an automation? Specifically to SMEs, how do you maximize in terms of leveraging?
Sure. I think this is a very important question to understand what thoughts the industry across India have on this topic. So my viewpoints are like this, whether we have Corona topic or a non-Corona topic, for every organization in India, automation always must be the strategy for long-term growth. That is as simple as that. And our other panelist has enforced that point as well. So it is always kind of a has to happen topic, should be there all along we sustain the business. Now with pandemic in place, it has raised our focus because all companies across India, we have been thinking about this topic for a very, very long time, last many years, but the pandemic is in place. So we are looking at this topic, can it be on my top most important high priority for my company, right? That's one. So it is kind of pushing us to look at not only product, you develop a disruptive product for the local market or for the market all across the world. It's also kind of pushing us to look at the business processes, right? So every company will have their own business processes happens, transactions happen. And in a conventional way, there are a lot of manual interventions are there to transact the business processes that we have in the company, along with the product and so on, right? So in my company, for example, Schaeffler India, we have a strategy to bring up the level of automation as a continuous process. That's very clear for us. And in this process, when you look at this topic of bringing better automation into the business processes and the material transfer processes in the factory, and which was done by the the people and the manual labor. Now, it is also critical. It is also very important to look at this problem from a 360-degree perspective, right? We must look at the socio cost topic, the loss of job, right, which was being done in a manual way. At the time we bring a automated process, there will be disruption in unemployability in the market. So we have to consider topic number one. Two, the time you're talking about bringing, automation, manufacturing, business process cost money, large money, right? So we also have to look at that, what is the level of investment that we're talking about year on year? Can we budget it well, put it in a kind of a phase, and try to address the low hanging fruit first, and then slowly migrate towards the journey, right? That has to be a 5-year to 10-year plan for every company, the smallest company in the world to the largest company in the world, right?
Got it.
One more critical part is that upskill, right? So upskill our employees so that as we continually bring new automation into the business and manufacturing, so they also must learn how to run the new technologies to make sure the business is a continual process is happening, right? So we also got to look at that, how we can upskill our own people to make sure all these three topics are going hand in hand and putting a roadmap for next 5 to 10 years time frame. One thing here, the time you're talking about pandemic, you're talking about automation, there are certain expectation all of us will have. This has to happen tomorrow, right? Since we're putting some money here, so output has to happen by tomorrow itself. So this is also very clear. If you really be focused on a long term and think for bringing several automation is in place, we have to have patience and got to put a long-term plan to make the maximum benefit, right?
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah, so the point number 2 that you said, whether the SMEs can also use the automation as their long-term goal process. I have a very strong yes to that, very strong yes, right? And now each company, they have their own business processes. So there cannot be a single answer. This is the automation can be applied to all companies, right?
Sure, and
so
no,
absolutely. Every company, they need to understand what is the business processes I have. How do I run business? What all are the transactions are happening? And then what all are the low-hanging fruits there, okay, which can be few days, few months, few weeks. It can be automated. Can you do that? Can you make us to start the journey first? So apply our own theory called Jugaad theory, right? That got to be applied to start the low-hanging fruit. Now, while you do that, we also got to be very clearly understand that why we should do this, right?
Right, and at this juncture, thanks, Mr. Mandal. At this juncture, I would like to invite Mr. Sunil. And do you think this pandemic or post-pandemic has put an opportunity for India to become a manufacturing hub? What do you believe? And gentlemen, just one request. We are a little over time, so I'll probably request that to keep your answer in brief, because we have few more interesting portions to cover, including, I will very interesting, what's your expectation from the budget, which is towards the end of the session. So keep your answer in brief, couple of minutes, and then we can come back. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Saboo. I think, I would say that, it's an emphatic yes, that, we see a fantastic opportunity. And when I say we, I talk about the industry as a whole, that, India can leverage completely to become one of the important manufacturing hubs, across the world. And there are many reasons to it. And one of them is, right from a stable political climate to, skilled workforce that we have, and also a country which has demonstrated and has a very strong track record of, living technology, going for new technology, innovation, brands, and also we have so many home, grown companies which are doing fantastic. I think that is, definitely the case. where I would close here is that it is important, in this fraternity of the industry, people who are there, and I'm not saying for a moment, they are not doing this. I think it is important to keep the global picture, in perspective as much as, when we are doing local manufacturing. And that would be very critical for us to leverage this in a big way. It could be global regulations, or it could be sustainability, which is a global topic at the end of the day. These things would, give us a very strong competitive advantage, and also put us in the global roadmap as a very clear, strong manufacturer, doing locally, but also can serve globally.
Globally.
That would be my summary.
Oh, that's very well said. Doing locally, but thinking globally and doing for the globe. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Sunil. Dr. Babu, our Honorable Prime Minister has been talking about Make in India, and more recently about our Atmanirbhar Bharat, right? What do you think, how important is for India, develop in India to become for the success of Make in India? How important is for develop in India for the success of Make in India?
So develop in India is very important, very, very important. My interpretation of Make in India has been a bit different, and maybe I'm yet to be clarified on it. To me, Make in India is an invitation to companies like Apple, Samsung, Tesla, and a host of others to make in India, to sell in India. So Indian consumers get more choices, and meet all of the increased needs without goods coming from overseas. So this is very important for India, that it's companies overseas. Indian consumer needs are increasing dramatically, and therefore we encourage companies to come here, invest, and make in India, so that the Indian consumer has a product here. While that is the case, the Develop in India program is very important, even for those MNCs setting up, because I think Indian customer needs are very unique. They are not the same which is prevalent in other parts of the world. So the Develop in India, whether it's an automotive product or electronic device, have to be done for those customers to benefit. Now, we see that tendency, with Jaguar and others. There is a tremendous amount of importance given to this Develop in India. But having said that, it's even more vital for Indian companies to develop in India, because to be able to compete in the world market, and not to be, just one of the players, but one of the top 3 players, one of the best in the world, these have to go through rigorous research and development, product development, process development. So Develop in India, I'm not considering that it is part of the Make in India program, because to me, whether it's Tesla or whether it's Apple, wherever they develop, still Make in India is a very important program, because that is going to generate employment, that is going to create opportunities, going to remove the extent of foreign exchange we're going to spend. But the Develop in India is what is going to help us, to be a leader. It's very important, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Babu. In fact, I think while there are 3 words to play, but there's a significant importance: develop in India, make in India, and made in India, right? I think that's
all different sections.
Right. But this has a very, very different connotation. But I think what I'm getting a sense is that all 3 has to go in hand to leverage the power. Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Babu, for your views. Mr. Indradev, if you can draw you into the discussion, do you think government policies currently are in sync with what we are talking about in terms of India becoming a Make in India or Made in India for the global market? Very briefly, sir.
Thank you. You are saying whether they are in sync, but first,
Right.
Quickly, I would like to say that I think the government's intentions are serious. And once we see some more focused approach to trying to make India get into a preeminent position. Now, the pandemic, I think, has given the opportunity for the government to do many things. And whether it's really good or not, how good was it, whether what it could have been done is something that can be judged a little later on. But I would say that it's really good. Just to quote a few things, Atmanirbhar Abhiyan 1, 2, and 3, it's a big host of schemes. And believe me, because being in the machine tool industry, which actually is a enabler to all manufacturing, so we can see what's happening to our consumption and demand in the country for machine tools is simply moving up. And some of this is attributed to the policies of the government, particularly the PLI scheme, which is in the electronics. So we already are hearing about the big plans being set up to make phones, in particular iPhones, and that is generating huge amount of employment, opportunity to make various parts in India, capital goods requirement for that, and of course is a highly competitive. What part of it will get imported? What will be able to supply? How do we ramp up? These are some questions. But coming to the policy front, the intention and the government's intention, for example, in the industrial policy framework, it has to still roll out the small definition of the small scale industry. For example, what they have done, I think it's good. And the labor reforms that is happening is also in the right direction, in my opinion. I don't want to talk about the farm sector, which we all know, which we know what is the true, what's really right, what we should have. And as such, the intentions are good. That always we can say that there are gaps and we need to do more. But what I want to say is the devil is in the detail. This is almost a cliche. But the point is, there has been difficulties about rolling out these policies effectively, problems in the last mile. These are areas, I think the government will learn. The intention seems to be serious and they are willing to learn. And I think for once an Indian can be looking, particularly manufacturing, can look forward to, huge ramping up in the next years to come. I don't see why Indian economical growth, cannot move. I think we are looking and we are in a pretty place, but we need to work now, all of us. So,
Thank you.
Well, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Indradev. Really appreciate your view. And at this stage, I would like to have a second opinion poll from our audience. And Pushkar, if you can do that. This is about, and probably 30 seconds. What are the main hurdles in the success of Make in India? And the options are, or the choices one can do, maybe can take top 2, multiple choice. Lack of clarity on how the companies can take benefit of these schemes. Less focus on R&D and innovation. Lack or high cost of main inputs, raw materials, components. Cost competitiveness of other competing countries like Vietnam is coming, Philippines is coming, and availability of cheap finance. I think what it means is at the low rate of interest. We'll just give another 20 seconds for people to respond, and then I will read out what our audience and the others distinguish other things. And we have the results, and so a lot of people are saying almost 50% of the participants and the audience says that less focus on R&D and innovation is one of the hurdles in Make in India scheme becoming a successful in terms of India. And 2 other points which comes out is 1, the high cost of inputs, raw materials and components, and also the cost competitiveness in relation to the other competing in the countries. And I believe this are pointing towards Bangladesh, Vietnam, Philippines, Pakistan to some extent, less, but other China and other countries. And the third one is lack of clarity on how the companies can take benefit of these schemes. Thank you. And that's interesting. That's interesting. And I think some of our panelists did touch upon these. Right. So on to the last portion of our discussion, very interesting, and that's very, I'm really looking forward. But given the time, I'll say that restrict your feedback or the points to 30 seconds. What are the two things you are expecting or your wish list part of the budget, which is around the corner, less than a month away? Starting with Mr. Sunil, what are the two wish lists, 2 points in your wish list?
No, thank you very much. I mean, being the last one, I were last of the portion. First, I again, end by thanking IPF and Mr. Rakesh. Very quickly on this subject, Subodh, our view would be is, we have a very strong view of growth of India for not only the next, 10 years and beyond, or decade and beyond, if I say. So hence, building on that, very strong continuation of supports to Make in India, and whatever supports Make in India, we have ourselves put up largest adhesive plant here in Maharashtra, and we've also done expansions this year, even during the pandemic. So I think we would urge the government to continue on that. And the second one would be is continue the strong supports for infrastructure expansions, whether it is in the form of roads and ports and railway, etc. So those would be the two areas I would kind of.
Thanks, Mr. Sunil. So your two wish list is continue to support for Make in India and push for infrastructure development. Okay, thank you. Mr. Biswajyoti Mandal, I beg your pardon. What's your two wish list? You are on mute, sir. You are on mute, please.
Yeah, can you?
Yes, absolutely. Loud and clear.
Great, wonderful. So I think before I talk about that, I must kind of appreciate India government. They have done a pretty good rebounding in the marketplace. I do not call this as a recovery, because we are only seen for a few months. So it is very critical. We need to see the sustenance of that. So only then we can convert this rebounding word to a recovery word. So that's one. So the budget in place, we'd like to see that keeping that the continuity as a topmost priority on this topic, the ease of growth, right? The growth that you've seen for last few months, how we can facilitate more to the ease of growth. So keeping that in the top of the mind, the policies, the taxations, one of the most critical part is that taxation. So how and what changes has to be done to make sure this ease of growth is continued to be there for a long term. That's one part. And the part number two, I think, to create a pool. So customer pool, I think there are, though we have seen some changes in the market, but we do not see much that customers are willing to pay more money to buy their product and the services. So that's once again very, very critical. So to make sure that this is kept on the top of the list while you put the budget together. And then the last part, which is very critical, when you put this budget, keeping this or two or three most important topic here, we need to make sure we measure the success. Okay, we measure this success on a continuous basis and go back to the countryman and tell, this is our success metric here, and quarterly, this is where we are adding value to our market framework, kind of a pool that we can create from the market and so on and so forth.
Fantastic.
So those are kind of a thinking process I have.
Thanks, Mr. Mandal. Really nice. You're saying continued incentive for demand and measurement of success and continue for the ease of growth. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Indradev, Babu, your two wish lists from our finance minister.
Okay.
Very quickly.
Thank you. I'm going to be rather crisp here. And there's nothing new. It's a old wine in a new bottle. Now the point was, I'm coming from the capital good industry.
Okay.
So what will help the capital good industry? So we would like a good increase in the capital budget allocation in the capital budget in this union budget. So substantial increase in the capital budget, that is one thing. And another thing that will spur capital goods consumption purchase would be investment allowance of 15%. This could make a lot of invest in the capital goods consumption.
Thank you. You are true to your word, very crisp, and I think well thought. Thank you. Last but not the least, Dr. Babu, your two wish list.
Yes, I want to start with the caveat. The availability of resources, which the finance ministry talks about budget, is just an enabler. It's really good governance that is a facilitator for growth. It is a multiplier effect, and the governance is, point one, all the resources available is going to shrink to nothing. A lot of people keep thinking that India is very unique, and therefore all kinds of new policies and new practices are brought into picture in terms of how taxpayers' money will be used to promote things. But I think we just need to look at how countries have done to improve their economy. I think we should use proven outcomes as the model for spending taxpayers' money and not come up with fancy ad hoc schemes because we just believe India is unique. So that is my real sincere wish to the government, that we will do an extensive understanding for what outcome is really proven. My suggestion to the government would be to encourage socially impactful business through extended funding. In 2021, government funds funded just 3% of socially impactful programs in the country. That has changed over the last 10 years, but it's still based on grants from outside of India. The primary funding for socially relevant programs are not occurring due to government intervention today.
Thank you, Dr. Babu. Some very, very relevant point you brought in. Socially impactful business funding 3%. It's also true that India being a large country, but we're still less than 1% on the healthcare. That's still true. We're a long way to go. Unfortunately, we have limited time, so I have to close the session, but I've been so, your presence, all four of you, Mr. Sunil, Dr. Babu, Mr. Mandal, and Mr. Indradev. So nice to have you and sharing your valuable thoughts. Thank you so much for your valuable time. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, IPF.
Thank you, IPF. Bye.
Over to Sanjay Rakesh.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Jindal, and all the panelists for intense and informative discussion. Moving ahead, I will call upon Mr. Madan Sabnavis, Chief Economist, Care Ratings, for his special address. Mr. Sabnavis has been a corporate economist since 1987 and has worked in the fields of development banking, commercial banking, engineering, and commodity markets before joining Care Ratings. He does freelance writing and he is author of 4 books. His latest is Hits and Misses, the Indian Banking Story, released in December 2020. Mr. Sabnavis, stage is all yours.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Rakesh, and good evening to everyone. In fact, I have been listening to this discussion which was going on about expectations of the budget. So before I try and provide an economic perspective of the same, let's first start off with what are our perspectives when it comes to what we expect from the economy in the current financial year. I think when we started the year, it was just about the time when we had lockdown, and we were quite optimistic in the sense that it was felt that India would be one of the better performing economies along with China. That was in the beginning of April. So I remember the United Nations had put out a report where they had spoken about a positive growth rate being registered by India and China. And subsequently, we had seen that the IMF had also felt that India would probably be slipping in terms of growth, but it would still be better than those of other countries. And subsequently, as the lockdown started off, and we had different phases of the lockdown, which carried on right into May, and then partial opening up, which we started off from June onwards. I think the perspectives have changed. We've seen estimates moving towards the minus 10 to 15% range. And finally, we at Care Ratings came up with a number of minus 7.7 to 7.9%, and felt kind of vindicated when the RBI also came up with a number of minus 7.5%. And I think that's what even the Central Statistical Organization is talking of. Well, these numbers per se are not that significant, since we all know that we're having for the first time a negative growth in GDP. What does this really mean for us? Actually, it actually means that the first time the economy is shrinking. And with the exception of agriculture, all other segments are supposed to be registering negative growth rates. But this automatically means that our production has gotten affected. In particular, if we're looking at the SME segment, which was possibly the worst hit segment, hasn't quite recovered. And in the current financial year, we've seen that notwithstanding the fact that several measures have been taken in terms of restructuring of loans, making credit available under the emergency credit line, with the guarantee being provided by the government of India, I think there are serious problems which are there on the demand side. So given the fact that the SMEs do have a very important role to play, not just from the point of view of overall growth, share in manufacturing as well as services, but also in terms of exports, I think this is one particular segment which is vulnerable, has always been vulnerable. And I think this is the focus sector which we'll have to focus on, because a related issue, which I think is a major problem for us today, is employment. That gets linked with the SME sector. I think that's the crux of the issue, that today in the economy, we have two engines which are not firing. One is consumption, one is investment. And if we're talking of consumption, there was some feeling that there would be a revival in the months of September, October, November, and probably even December as we end the festival season and the post-harvest time. And we have gotten a kind of a mixed baggage out here. While certain months have shown that there has been an increase in demand for consumer durable goods, including your automobiles, a bit of real estate as housing. But on the whole, we have seen the numbers have been fairly volatile. And the sense which we are getting is that, well, yes, definitely on a month-on-month basis, the economy is doing better, because as we're unlocking the economy, there would be a tendency for production to increase relative to what it was in the previous months. But if we're doing a year-on-year comparison, the picture is still quite dismal. And it will probably take another year or so before we're able to return to the so-called pre-COVID levels. Even the pre-COVID levels, I think I would like to flag the fact that we ended 2019-20 on a rather negative note, because we had growth of just around 4.2%, again, one of the lowest numbers. And we had all started off with estimates around 7.5% to 8% for 19-20. So notwithstanding the fact that the lockdown was in motion for the last 1 week of the financial year, we still came down with a disappointing number. It was back to saying that, why is it that our consumption has not been growing? Why is it that investment has not been growing? Because there's an extent to which we can rely on the government to propel the economy, but otherwise it will have to come more from the private sector. It will have to come more from these two particular engines. Now, I mentioned out here, I think the problem which we have here is of employment. So not enough jobs have been created in the past. And what we have seen is that during these pandemic times, there has been a tendency for corporate India especially to start cutting down on the salary bill. There's been a tendency for layoffs in a number of sectors, especially if you're looking at the services sector. So within the services, if you look at hospitality, you look at tourism, you look at media, entertainment, I think these are the segments which still remain largely closed even today. So while there has been some kind of a semblance of opening up in certain pockets, given the fact that our migrant problem has not yet been addressed fully, people have not started coming back to the place of work because of the uncertainty which lies. I think what we have seen is that the service sector, which used to be the driving factor of the Indian economy, given the fact around 60 to 65% of our GDP comes from this particular segment, I think seeing the services sector collapsing in this particular year, I think that is one of the major things which we should keep in mind. So all this has meant that if jobs are not created, incomes are not increasing, I think that has affected consumption. Maybe to a certain extent, there was some kind of pickup which took place in the months of October, November. But if you look at your IIP growth numbers, I think it's positive 1 month, negative next month, just at a point of time when we thought that we've at least moved into the positive territory. We've been told that in November, the number was actually again negative. I think consumption is one problem which we have. The second is in terms of investment. I think for any economy to grow at 7 to 8% on a sustained basis, we need to have investment increasing. And what we have seen in India is that, again, there are two sides to this. One is what happens in manufacturing, the other what happens in infrastructure. In terms of manufacturing, we have seen on account of the lockdown, on account of the fact that people were not allowed to buy their the regular kind of goods which they would like to do, we have seen that there is surplus capacity in most industries. So based on RBI data, which we have for June, it was around 47%. Our sense is that even in the quarter ending September, it might have improved to probably the early 60s. But typically, we need to have a capacity utilization rate in the region of around 78 to 80% before we are in a position to say that there's a fresh investment going to come out. So this doesn't mean that investment is not taking place, but CMI data shows that investment is definitely around 30 to 40% less than what it was last year. It is taking place in certain industries, but it's more localized rather than being broad-based. And what we really require is that broad-based investment to come. And given the fact that we're not really expecting positive growth in the industrial sector for this current financial year, it's back to saying that it could be happening in the next financial year, probably because of the low base effect. The other part is on infrastructure, and in infrastructure, we have seen that private sector infrastructure has again been lagging, because normally it is a case of saying that the government takes the initiative and then it is followed by private sector investment. But today we have a situation where while the central government has been trying quite frantically to meet their expenditure targets, but the state governments, which contribute to a comparable amount to what the states central is really putting in, have had problems in terms of balancing the budgets, managing their fiscal deficits. But consequently, we have seen that investment, even from the government side, has been lagging. And given the fact that most of the states, as well as even probably the central government, are going to be overshooting the budget, their fiscal deficit numbers. Central government was targeted at 3.5%. We believe it could be closer towards the 8% mark. We have a number of 7.8 to 8.4%. State deficits are probably going to be in the region of around 4%. The only way you manage it is by cutting down on your discretionary expenditure, and discretionary expenditure automatically translates to capex. So we are really talking of an entire cycle which has been lost in this particular financial year on both investment as well as consumption. Consumption, of course, has been a continuous story, because earlier we used to always say that consumption is suffering because of a drought year, farm sector not doing well. But for the last 3 successive years, we've seen that agriculture has been a rising star, so as to say, within the composition of our GDP. But notwithstanding this particular factor, we have still seen that consumption is not quite so that is the picture as far as we're talking of last year. And two particular things which we would be looking forward to, I think, in the next month or so. One would be the union budget, and the second would be the monetary policy of the Reserve Bank of India. Now, as far as the budget is concerned, I would like to say that we should temper our expectations, because we're looking at what really is a budget. A budget is a statement of account. It's a kind of a P&L account of the government of India, just like you're talking of a corporate P&L. And there are lots of limitations to what you can do, and everything is contingent on what happens in the economy. So when we're talking of the ability of a budget to propel the economy, I think it's not too much of elbow room which is there for the finance minister. I think that's one of the reasons what we have seen the government being very, very proactive right from the month of March, where we had these Atmanirbhar programs which were launched, which had announcements, which had lots of programs which were mentioned over a period of around 7 to 8 months, right from May to November, where they tried to address issues in different sectors. And at that particular point of time, I think there's been some bit of controversy about whether it was really a stimulus, a fiscal stimulus, or was it a monetary stimulus. But the way I would tend to look at it is that it was a kind of an overall reform package, policy package, which the government had brought in different steps, in different stages to cover different sectors. And I think wherever there were pain points, they were trying to address it. And most of these measures, I would tend to believe, are more for the medium to long term. They were not supposed to be some things which were to work miracles in the current financial year itself. Again, if you look at something like the PLI scheme, I think that is something which has been spoken of, a very effective scheme. But we should remember that it's based on certain targets being met in terms of both investment as well as in terms of turnover. And that's not something which can happen in a single year or even maybe in 2 years' time. So the way I look at most of the Atmanirbhar announcements made is that they were targeted towards the medium term, so that over the period of the next maybe 3 to 4 years, sector-specific problems you've had in real estate sector, maybe in your infrastructure, covering the power sector, you're looking at roads, those kind of things have actually been addressed. So if we're coming back to the budget to say what can really be happening in the budget, we should remember that the primary goal of the government this year is going to be some semblance of fiscal consolidation. Things have gone quite horribly wrong, I think, this year, because if I'm saying 3.5% going to something like 8%, the main goal of the finance minister will be that how do we charter a path so that we're able to go back towards the 3% number. Admittedly, I don't think one can do it in a single year's time. It would be taking at least 2 years, if not 3 years, before we can look at 3%. So I think the starting point of the budget would be that how do I get it from 8% to maybe 5% or 6% in the next financial year, and then gradually go back towards the region of 3%. Given given this being one of the primary goals of fiscal management in this particular budget, we would tend to believe that given the fact that you cannot really lower the taxes, all of us would like to have lower taxes. The corporate sector would like to have lower taxes. We as individuals would like to have lower taxes. And I think a supply side economics tend to say that if you lower the tax rates, it will lead to higher consumption, higher investment. But fortunately, I don't think the government is in a position to actually cut rates because we're not quite sure what's going to be the growth taking place in the next year. Because we have calculated that even in case there's an abnormal 15% growth in nominal GDP next year, that is 10% growth in real GDP, 5% growth in inflation, we would still about be reaching the GDP nominal number of 224 to 25 crores, which was what was assumed for 2021, which really means that we're not going to garner that kind of tax revenue based on what tax rates we have. And I think there are lots of uncertainties in terms of whether this investment, which has been used more as kind of a balancing item, whether it would really be able to, you will be able to really complete this particular program. So there are going to be problems on the revenue side. So therefore, we would tend to believe that expenditures are not going to be very extravagant. Focus will, of course, be to begin with on how do you make sure that this vaccination drive goes on, whether we will be able to vaccinate a larger number of people, because a larger number of people means a higher cost to the government. Even if you're talking in terms of, say, something like 400 rupees per vaccinated person, if we just multiply it by a population of 1,300 million, that would be coming to something like 50,000 crores. It's on a very much lower side. So I don't think the government is willing or has the ability to spend 50,000 crores in this particular year. So it's going to be spread out, maybe spread over what the center does, what the state does, and what they will be opening up, what they'll be throwing open to the private market so that we go and pay for our own vaccination. So all these kind of possibilities are, of course, there. So given that concentration more on health, probably on education, because I think education has taken a new kind of form. So even in terms of public education, that is what is being sponsored by the government, things are turning to the online mode. So there will be larger investments made by the government in terms of making sure that the infrastructure is created. I think on capital expenditure, I would say that we should temper our expectations. Last year, we saw that something like 4.1 lakh crores was budgeted for capex. Another 25,000, 30,000 crores was announced during the course of the year. And again, out of this 4 lakh crores, around 1/3 of it normally typically goes for defense. And defense may not really be adding to demand within the country. A large part of that could be imported arms and ammunition, which we have. So talking of 4.3, 4.4 lakh crores, probably the maximum we could be thinking of is an increase of around 5 to 10% in the current financial year. And there too, I think most of the concentration is going to be on roads and railways. That's what we have seen in the past, and maybe to a certain extent on urban development. So with all these constraints, I would look at the budget more as kind of a balancing act this year. So even though the FM said that there are going to be lots of positive moves, but I think if you really look through it, see what kind of measures have to be taken for relief, for education, for health, I don't think there's going to be too much of room to really think of great deal of expenditure on the capex front. At the same time, there will have to be something done in terms of capitalization of public sector banks. There's talk of setting up of a new DFI for which there'll have to be contribution coming from the central government. So I think there are going to be multiple objectives of the government, and trying to satisfy all of them may not mean to deployment of too many resources. Right? So therefore, I would say that we could be happy in case we are talking of a fiscal deficit in the region of around 5 to 6% for next financial year, maybe 5 to 10% increase in capital expenditure. Hopefully not any major tax burden being imposed on the people, because there's some talk of a COVID tax, a COVID cess, which could be imposed by the government. And we have seen in India that once you have a cess, it remains forever. It never really goes. And that could be, of course, quite negative for consumption, especially if you're going to tax it on the non-lower income groups, because look at the consumption, it typically emanates from people who have the spending power. If you're going to tax them, it could be counterproductive. Now, against this background, the last part would be on terms of monetary policy. I think there's some good news which came a couple of days back when the CPI inflation number came much lower than what we expected. Because if you look at the RBI's projections of inflation for the fourth quarter, it continued to be in the region of around 5 to 6%. Now we're talking of something in the region of 4.5%. So while in this particular policy, we may not expect the Reserve Bank of India to take any rate action as such, But the doors definitely do open for rate cuts during calendar 2021. And probably the policy of April could be looking in terms of a rate cut, provided inflation remains benign. Of course, what we have seen in inflation is that normally when the food items prices come down, there's a tendency for non-food prices to increase. And that's something which we've again noticed out here. And the fact that we've had the winter months, which typically sees food prices coming down, is what is manifested in the inflation numbers of 4.6% inflation, which we saw, which was released on last week. This may not really last continuously. I think the RBI is also aware of the fact that food prices do, especially of vegetables, cereals, they tend to increase once we move towards the summer season, which would be April, May. So I think there would be a wait and watch policy followed in the month of February. That is the policy which comes just after the budget. And, but there's definitely hope that there could be some rate action. Otherwise, we were really penciling in the fact that there may be no rate cut at all in the year 2021, going by projections which the RBI made earlier for inflation. And the fact that any revival in the economy would also mean that demand pull inflationary forces would be picking up. And just to point out here, I think we had the WPI inflation numbers which came yesterday. For the first time, we saw that the prices of manufactured goods had shown inflation of around 4%. And that's happened after a very, very long time. It's a positive sign from the point of view of industry, because it actually shows that there is some bit of regaining of the pricing power, which was lost for a very long time. But again, we need to see whether this can be sustained, whether this really translates into further higher inflation, which could come in the way of monetary policy. So I think as of now, we'll have to have a wait and watch policy, a patient look as far as the budget is concerned, and a wait and watch when it comes to monetary policy. We definitely do expect the economy to fare statistically better than what it did in 2021. But of course, that's a no-brainer, because if I'm talking of a negative growth rate in 2021, 21-22 would definitely tend to throw up a much higher rate, positive rate. Right now, we're looking at something closer towards the 10% mark. And the important thing, of course, even while interpreting these numbers, because I think you all must have read about lots of forecasts which have been put out by different agencies, which are talking of things ranging from 8% to 14% growth next year. But I think the critical thing which we should always look out for is that our jobs being created. Because unless jobs are created, income increases, only then will we be able to revive the consumption cycle. And only when the consumption cycle recovers would there be an incentive for more investment to come through. And when we have the investment growing, investment rate, in fact, has been coming down to something like 26.5%. But we need this number to go back towards the 34% mark, which we had seen at a time when the Indian economy grew by around 8%. So I think that's what we should really watch out for: jobs being created, consumption going up, leading to higher investment. I think that's when we really know that the economy is in a stronger position. So I would tend to believe that 21-22 will be a year of consolidation. Hopefully, the vaccination and its negative impacts should be behind us by the time we come to the end of this calendar year. And from 22-23 onwards, we could really talk of a genuine growth taking place, probably in the region of around 6.5–7% to begin with, before we go towards the 7 to 8% range. That's how we will be able to reach that 5 trillion economy mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sabnavis, for your insightful thoughts. Moving on to our next point in agenda, small and medium scale enterprises who contribute immensely to India's GDP and manufacturing sector were severely hit because of COVID storm. However, disrupted global supply chains and intentions of MNCs to diversify their procurement strategies present a big opportunity for Indian SMEs in particular. Even the government has announced a lot of schemes for SMEs. Will these events lead to growth for SMEs? We need to wait and watch. To know more about this and all the other aspects of SMEs, we have our next panel discussion that is titled as "Are Indian SMEs Ready for Growth, Ready for Future?" May I now invite Mr. Saikat Roy, Director West Region of KR Ratings, to moderate this timely discussion. Mr. Saikat Roy has over 18 years of management expertise across different geographical regions, particularly in products and services for SMEs. prior to this assignment, he was associated with business standard. Sorry, he was associated with Standard Chartered Bank and IndusInd Bank Limited. Mr. Saikathra, you can begin the proceedings now.
Hi, very good evening, everybody. Saikat here, happy to represent Care Ratings at the IPF Industrial Excellence Awards. May I introduce, are the panelists there, Rakesh?
Yes, they are
I
there.
don't think their video is on.
They are there.
Okay, great. So, oh, hi, good evening, everybody. I was not able to see. Right. So we have with us Mr. Anil Saboo, President, Indian Electrical and Electronic Manufacturers Association and MD of Elektrolites Power Private Limited. We have with us Ms. Ashita Gupta, Chairperson SME Chapter at MAID and COO of Smile Electronics Limited. We have Mr. Mahesh Desai, Chairman of Engineering Export Promotion Council of India and MD of Mira and Seco Pumps Private Limited. We have with us Ms. Neeti Sharma, Senior Vice President, Team Lead Services. Very warm welcome to all my co-panelists. Like they say that every crisis brings forth with it a lot of opportunities. Over the last 6 months, we have all been discussing a lot of things, over dependence on one country, supply chain networks, digitization, performance links, incentives, ease of doing business, etc., etc. So here we are today to discuss on the topic, are Indian SMEs ready for the future? Before we start, I think it is time for an audience poll to start off with. The poll should be on our screens right now. We'll just give a couple of seconds for the audience to answer. And then I think we'll have the score for us. Do we have the score now? Great. So clearly inflation in commodity prices is a cause for concern. Great. So that gives us the perfect cue to start our proceedings. But before we go crystal ball grazing and hear views from our esteemed panelists, let me quickly run you past the status report of where we stand. We just heard Madan. And so before the outbreak of pandemic, the government of India budget had a fiscal deficit of 3.5% of the GDP. Based on the first advance estimates, Care Ratings has projected that number of 3.5% will now at 7.8% of GDP. On adding another 1.1 lakh crore that is required for the GST shortfall and borrowing on behalf of states, this number is expected to look like 8.4% of the GDP. Let me share with you some more statistics. These are mostly year-on-year numbers, and some are April to November and some are April to October. I will share with you 15 crisp data points. Here it is. Production of commercial vehicles is down by 57%. Production of passenger vehicles is down 29.8%. Production of ACs is down by 73.5%. Cotton yarn is down 33.7%. Production of shampoo is up by 13.5%. Production of steel is down 19.4%. Production of coal is down minus 2.6%. Cement is down 19.5%. Agrochem is up 15%. Printing machinery is down minus 56%. Textile machinery is down 29.3%. Production of generators and alternators is down by minus 29.3%. Cumulative cargo handled at ports is down 10.5%. Broadband subscribers are up 14.1%. Bank credit from November 19 to November 20 to manufacturing industry is down 0.7%. And finally, power consumption in December 20 was 5% over and above what it was in December 19. So basically, the disruption has been total and the recovery at best seems fractured. So to kickstart things, Ashita, if I could come to you first, you are an entrepreneur, you are leading the SME chapter at MATE. How do you analyze the performance of MSMEs in 2020?
Thank you so much, Saket. And it was very interesting to hear the statistics from you. Nobody would have thought that everybody thought the care of hair would get better, right? All right, so we at MATE strive to make the SME sector, which is already the backbone of India, stronger, more collaborative in nature, and definitely make it more inclusive in nature. You know, everybody knows SME is the focus sector and the focus area for the government and the industry at large, because 1/3 of our GDP is driven by the SME sector. We're moving more from an agrarian to an industrial economy. Growth of exports has to come from SMEs, as we've seen even in the past. You know, we can take templates from countries like Japan, Thailand, China. All of them have over 60% of employment driven by the SME sector. All of them have boomed GDP only by the growth of SME sector, not only in employment, but also in exports. So needless to say, SME sectors are definitely, you know, the backbone of any economy and are the only way for an economy to grow. Now, 2020, in my personal opinion, is, you know, one of just a chapter of the larger story. We need to make the SME sectors more sustainable. We need to be able to make them drive the nation, and they have to be the object of and focus in the future. What I think is relevant at this point is that all SMEs need a dramatic improvement in about 4 to 5 key areas. Let's start with the most important one, credit. This is a question you asked in the poll, and it was interesting to see just around 30% of people thought that credit is you know, suffering today for SMEs. The thing is, even with the 20 lakh crore package that was rolled out by the government, only 50% of the SME sector really benefited from it or really even availed that credit availability. Reason being, 99% of SMEs today in India are micro industries. Each of these industries, being a micro industry, is not fighting for sustainability, but it's fighting for scale. And so fighting for scale drives different points that require, you know, credit availability. It's not about collateral driven credit, right? You can't just kind of focus the NBFCs, which is only about 20% of the financial sector, to kind of sustain this growth scale in the SME sector. You need the more fundamental private banks, the more fundamental core banking sector, which is about 80% of the banking industry, to kind of drive that availability of credit to SMEs. Because only when the government applies a more technology-driven solution, uses AI to its advantage, and drives a policy in credit which helps SMEs scale, not only with philosophical policies, but also very practical approaches, which make you know, fundamental policy decisions, fundamental GST decisions, fundamental Factories Act decisions more available. SMEs will not grow. SMEs will not become more sustainable. And so I think it's important that one, credit availability for scale is made the focus area in this. Secondly, I think SMEs in India in general, because our micro industry is 99%, are very narrow in terms of their focus. Today, most of the companies that comprise the SME sector are very focused in what they want to do, which is great, because it's only with focus can you really draw scale. But you also need to have a top-down approach in terms of what can you leverage to kind of reach that market. If we look at a very simple example of Alibaba, the only thing Alibaba did was kind of create that market leverage for the SME sector. And so we need that kind of market availability, that kind of foreseeing nature to make market leverage available to the SME sector. The third thing I think that's most important is regulation. So if you look at manufacturing industry itself, the Factories Act applies to any company that has more than 10 employees, any factory, right? Now that has large-scale cost effects, large-scale policy decision effects on any SME sector. Today, driving land, building, electricity, which are all incremental P&L items. It's so important to make the P&L sustainable, right? So it's important for government organizations, it's important for organizations like us, MATE, to kind of drive that sort of voice of the SME sectors to say that, look, it's not just the PLI scheme, it's not just taking advantage of a disenablement scheme, but it's about taking advantage of a sustainable scheme that says, let's not just help you with the disadvantages that you face globally, let's help you with the P&L issues that you face globally. One more very important point that even Care touched upon in the previous conversation was tax. Now, GST itself is so complex. You have everywhere from 18 to 28% and above plus BCD on most electronic products that come in. If you want to make SME sectors grow, one thing you have to do is formalize the sector, right? And that's not going to happen until the GST scheme becomes simpler. I would think that if the GST scheme becomes a small 2-3 pronged approach, where you're kind of then subsidizing or helping those higher tax rate items to kind of become more eco-friendly to the SME sector, then you're really talking about growth. You're talking about taking advantage of the tax system in terms of growth, not in terms of higher tax rates. I think the last one, which is also one of the biggest ones, because that's what we're trying to do, is kind of voicing the SME sector concerns, right? Today, the PLI schemes, like I said, the disenablement is what they are kind of focusing on to change. We're all saying that it's not just about that 5%, it's about taking out the gray market and saying, hey, let's make the SME sectors concentrate and service the formal industry and not the informal industry. So I think to summarize, in 2020, what we've only seen is kind of an amplification of what was going on. We need to see more sustainable and capital-driven and market-driven approaches from the industry and the government sector.
Thank you. Mr. Desai, if I could come to you next. How are you seeing it from EPC point of view, specifically with regard to exports?
Yeah, I will restrict myself to exports from SME sector. And how this present situation has affected us. And if you permit, I can also cover the area of what other MNC looks at India in place of China and the road tap place. Or if these questions are asked at a later stages, I'll answer when they are asked to me. So what do you want me to cover? The first part?
That would be better. We'll come to the MNC's part second.
Yeah, I get it, I guess. So I'll cover the first part. If you ask me, situation is no different for SMEs. In fact, it is worse. Engineering exports was also hit by the pandemic, as disruption in global supply chain was an invariable consequence of the spread of COVID-19 and subsequent lockdowns imposed across the globe to arrest it. However, situation started improving slowly after the first 2 quarters, that is March to September 2020, as governments in almost all nations opted for strategic unlocking of socio-economic activities. Indian SMEs suffered the most due to the supply chain disruption and economic lockdowns, as they were already facing several problems and constraints for their growth. However, the domestic government did their best to support the MSME sector during the ongoing crisis. This sector saw a number of measures from the government to ensure the revival as well as sustained growth. The first of its kind, Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, a brainchild of our Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, directed towards the more self-reliant India, included a number of packages for the MSMEs to address their ruptures made by COVID and the pre-COVID concerns, especially of finance. I'm referring to 10% immediate finance and also the 20% announced by the finance minister. In fact, this is the best ever endeavor of the Indian government to develop a globally competitive MSME, especially on the face of its COVID-led setback. Now, we foresee a good growth in coming quarters, and also we expect more export orders from abroad for our SMEs, particularly in certain special sectors like health equipment and some other equipments. So at present, I will add by saying one sentence in the Bollywood style, Kabhi Khushi or Jada Gum. That will convey our situation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Desai. Mr. Saboo, so how is it from your perspective in the domestic? Is it cushy or is it gum?
Yeah, I am very positive about it, and it's a really great opportunity.
And are you seeing light at the end of this tunnel? And from your perspective, IEEMA, how are you seeing, how did the SMEs perform in 2020? What is the present status as we stand today?
Mr. Roy, after the challenging year of 2020, it is very relevant now to focus on to elevate 2021. And it is all about dealing with uncertainty. There is a need to develop connectivity in a more vibrant way among all the stakeholders. I would rather say that 2020 was transformational and learning tunnel, as everybody learned the way to survive in most difficult situations and realized the importance of digitalization and global connects. IEEMA has been recommending Atmanirbhar Bharat for a long, and now Honorable Prime Minister has coined this phrase as a headline of the new initiatives by government for a self-reliant India. It is a great opportunity for the Indian industry to ride this initiative for sustainable growth for decades together. Privatization, freedom, and competitive market are key focus areas in 2021. The 5 pillars for which IEEMA is focusing is: 1. Localized manufacturing. 2nd, digitalization and innovation. 3rd, global penetration. 4th, enhancing capability by international collaborations. And not last the least, focus on quality and productivity. You see, there is 500 billion US dollar electrical market is there world across, and India's share is just less than 2%. By adopting all these practices, our share can be increased to 2.5 times in next 5 to 7 years. And I foresee a tremendous growth of Indian MSMEs as well as electrical industry in global supply chain in coming decade. Thank you, Mr. Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Saboo. Niti, coming to you. COVID has resulted in a labor crisis due to reverse migration. And then again, when the unlock started, we saw industries face a lot of issues with respect to availability of labor. So how are you seeing it? Is the labor shortage issue behind us?
Second, hello everyone. Second, I would not say that the labor shortage is behind us completely, but I think it's on the way to recovery. We are aware that industry has faced huge challenges due to migration, but let's remember that COVID as a pandemic is not a passing shower, it is a climate change. You know, we've seen a lot of changes that have happened because of the impact of the pandemic. I believe that this change will continue for a while, and it will probably be the force for structural reforms that will explode the creation for productive and better paid jobs. Which is why, while maybe we have the head count in our offices right now, people have come back, from their hometowns, but probably we don't have the right set of people given our changed requirements over the last 10 to 12 months. Yeah. One thing that I would also like to add, I think when the pandemic started and people were crying that everyone's going back, what's going to happen to us? Let's realize materialistically, the number of people who went back to their hometowns was not as high as it could have been. People have come back, and industries have done a huge, I think, help. I know of companies who have taken chartered flights, to places like remote Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, got their workforce back. They have engaged them through the pandemic. I think there's a lot that has already been done, but I'm sure there's a lot that is required to be done. I think, like what Mr. Saboo said, this is a time for change. We are going to see lot of shifts in everything that we end up doing. So yeah, I don't think the challenge is behind us. I think we are going to face different challenges now, not just that of number of bodies, but probably bodies with hands and legs and brains attached. I think that's a requirement of industry going forward.
True. Ashita mentioned about greater scale. Mr. Desai and Mr. Saboo mentioned about global penetration. Probably automation in some of the labor-intensive businesses could be one of the way forward. This pandemic probably has sowed the seeds for reverse hypermobility. We were like traveling here, there, everywhere, and this is like the reverse of the hypermobility. It also probably sowed the seeds for reverse urbanization. We saw people wanting to stay away from the major cities due to fear of infection. Adoption of digital tech is at an all-time high now in our personal lives and is also impacting the way we conduct business. For example, we are having the IPF awards online. At least a year before the pandemic hit us, global corporates had already begun considering the China plus one policy. And in the aftermath, we have witnessed that the global and local supply chains have been fractured somewhat. And what the corporates are now asking themselves that how do we diversify our supply chain risk? Just in time is being reevaluated, and corporates are actually toying with the idea that whether to continue with just in time or move to just in case model. Even within the country, we are seeing champions for Atmanirbhar Bharat, vocal for local, and very rightly so. But we have to be realistic. According to some data available from April to September, out of 56 companies which moved out of China since its trade war with the US, only 8 have invested in India, 26 have shifted to Vietnam. Let's keep China aside for the moment. Is India matching up to Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines in attracting global manufacturing? Let's explore some of the interventions that is required to prepare our economy for what we are now terming as the new normal. Mr. Desai, if I can come to you first. MNCs, you are saying, are looking at alternatives. You have a 5-point agenda and a policy for manufacturing and outsourcing. Can we actually become the number one option for MNCs? And what are the key challenges that you are facing specifically with regard to export? You're on mute, sir.
We definitely, MSME sector can become alternative to China, but it requires a lot of structural changes in policy. And out of that, our mindset has to change, all of us. See, what we find difficulty, particularly in MSME sector, is the mindset. You see, we have to adopt automation, we have to adopt digitalization, we have to think and adopt quality and the productivity together. And the way to productivity is through quality. These are the few things. And this is where EPC is trying with awareness program. We are conducting regularly awareness program, digitalization program, apps program, and the practice of following the best method and the best quality standards. Now I will also say, and we are also expecting government to support in this, like skill development and adoption of automation with digitization. So the word today is what we call it phygital. In physical world, we have to adopt digital thing. So the new word coined is phygital. Anyhow, the other part is, I go back to the government incentive provided. Another brainchild of our Prime Minister was the unique Make in India initiative that was launched in 2014 to rejuvenate Indian manufacturing sector. Leading global sectors from all segments of manufacturing were invited to set up their production units in India, taking advantage of business-friendly policy and skilled labor force. It did not work. Now in 2020, the government initiated Make-in program, what I call it as phase 2, Atmanirbhar Bharat, with a vocal for local. That means approach. In fact, the success of the first program induced the government and the failure of that was to go for the second one in order to make India a global manufacturing hub in the foreseeable future. The new mantra now for SME is to produce quality goods and services in quantity for local as well as global market. The new mantra is local. Produce locally for local market as well as global market. The major challenges in competing China at the global level, most important, are infrastructure and logistics. Apart from that, MSME faces lot of compliances, lot of laws and ease of, and then I cannot tell you, we face every day some problem in some compliance. Either there are no containers or there are no availability of so many things. The incumbent government, however, has been quite responsive to these challenges. Policies now are more business conducive, of course, than few years back. But we need more liberalization, and we need more liberalization so that we can attract FDI, and then to make ease out the norms for FDI, like lowering of interest rates and other industry-friendly measures. Initiatives have also been taken with utmost urgency to solve logistic problem. I tell you, this is a big hurdle. You know, kilometers of container are lined up outside Madras airport or Madras seaport. Containers are lined up at Hyderabad airport for air transportation. This is a very serious thing in today's what we face every day. Now with several projects like Bharatmala Pariyojana and the umbrella scheme of visionary corridor across India, like Western Corridor, Eastern Corridor. But what is required today is the quick implementation of all these dream projects, which will help us to achieve on par with China in coming few years. Most important is to support of the government should be given for our R&D work and tie up with the academia, our national laboratories for research and development. When I say research and development, this can take place at ground level, at the floor shop of the manufacturing. We can do everything in the incremental way. We don't need Einstein or Newton to have new formulas and new things, but we need to improve our quality and follow international standard. Apart from that, we have to get certified our products by international agencies so that our export to foreign countries will be very smooth. Now,
Understood.
proper initiative of government is announcing many initiatives, but what is needed is implementation of these initiatives at the ground level. As you know, government has announced 3 lakh crore for MSME, that is 20% of their borrowers on February 28. Still, the bank are only able to disburse, I think, 1.8 lakh crore. Still 1.2 crore is pending. Now, this is a problem in implementation.
Right.
Then there are challenge of competency. You see, Chinese people work on very, very high productivity. The scale of production is unbelievable, unbelievable. And then we do not understand their finance structure. What support they are getting from government, it's very, very difficult to understand. Because this I am telling you, by couple of visits to China, and I'm visiting China from last 15 years continuously. And then they have a lot of support. And the most important part in Chinese manufacturing, their women force in manufacturing is very high compared to ours. And they are all dedicated. Chinese women and workforce, they live apart from their home. Their home are somewhere, and they live in some remote places where manufacturing centers are there. I have visited such homes where the workers stay. Now, these are something, if you want to catch up with China, as I said, we all have to change our mindset. Well, nothing more. Thank you.
Thank you. Coming to back to you, Mr. Saboo. Mr. Desai says Make in India clearly is probably not working. And we have a lot of boxes to tick before we can call ourselves a major force in exports. A charge also made against SMEs is that it is a conundrum that you want to gain scale, but the moment you gain scale, then you will not be an SME anymore. So probably the SMEs are not helping themselves in the terms of making a collective or a cooperative, and you procure together so that scale is attained where you remain as an SME, but you can procure in bulk. Are you seeing similar challenges of implementation in the domestic supply chain as well?
Mr. Roy, I would say that you rightly pointed out, we need to have cluster approach. Wherever you see in China, as Mr. Desai has also visited many times, the entire town they have developed, and which is focusing on 1 kilometers together. So that is the cluster approach. That's how they are getting so much production and at competitive price. And Indian government and we all know all the problems, and now we are really focusing to solve them. So it is difficult always to predict future. I can only see a perspective of factors that are at play. Let's look at some strengths that attract FDI to become factory of the world. How India can become factory of the world. We have a large domestic market which consumes most of its output. So the market is there. Then we have adequate supply of young workforce in this decade until 2030. India will add 100 million working age population, whereas China will suffer a decline. And as he rightly pointed out, we have to utilize our women power. You see, if you see that developed countries, almost 50 to 70% women are working. They are the most efficient workforce. We need to utilize them. We are pacing our reforms. Unified tax regime is a game changer. More electricity reforms towards tariff rationalization, privatization are underway. On the flip side, we still need some reform in labor, land fix, infrastructure gaps, and tackle high financing cost. India's ease of doing business can be very well taken, though it can be commendably improved, but it's still lower than China. Let's not forget global majors are heavily invested in China. So China is an important strategic element in their value chains. Shifting them to another country will entail following incremental steps spread over time. I learned Apple will take another 5 years to shift part of their capacities at China to India. So India will continue to be preferred destination for the many global entrepreneurs due to our strong fundamentals. So India is replacing China as factory to the world, will therefore take some time, but it will happen. So if I count just 5 factors which are required and to be focused, and specific efforts are to be put in place to become number one. That is, increase your investments, improve infrastructure, grow economic output, build fast and efficient supply chains, and focus on skill development. These factors will really make India number one, and I foresee that in next 3 to 4 years, they will outpace China. Thank you.
True, true. Very, very crucial points made. But along with that, you mentioned investment, sir. I deal with a lot of renewable energy customers. 100% FDI is allowed in renewable sector. And we are doing a great disservice to ourselves by some of the state governments renegating on power purchase agreements which have been agreed by the previous government. So this creates a destabilization for people to invest in China. We invest in India. We are able to attract foreign global manufacturers. For example, in Bengaluru, we saw what happened to the Winston plant. This does not give the correct look and feel which global investors probably are expecting from India. So we will need to very, very closely look at that. Ashita, coming back to you, how do you think SMEs should prepare? How are you preparing yourself as an entrepreneur to face this challenge of able to attract or maybe collaborate with some international partners?
Okay, so first thing is I'm going to draw to answer your question on what my colleagues have said, even in the previous question. I think the most important thing to do is pay attention to the customer. And so you need skilled manpower. As Ms. Sharma said, as Mr. Desai said, you need quality to drive productivity. And Mr. Saboo very, very rightly said you need to digitize and you need to kind of move what you have at hand and transform, right? See yourself and see this period as a transformatory period. So I think the central point is customer centricity, because unless you can service the need, unless you can broaden your horizons and service the market need, you're not going to scale per se, right? And coming back to that point, because I think it's not, it's not just scaling to become a large organization. We're talking about scale on an incremental level throughout the market. And so Mr. Saboo very rightly said, you have to look at a cluster approach, because unless you contribute to the ecosystem will not grow. And unless the ecosystem again contributes and invests in itself, they also will not grow. So even we at Smile, we say, look, absolutely most important customer centralization and looking at how to deliver quality and productivity. That's why a customer from China will go to Vietnam, right? And then maybe look at India, because the mindset and the perception still of Indian industries is that you will not get that kind of process, that kind of quality, that kind of steadfastness on this is what is required for process. So that's where we need to change ourselves. We need to be able to leverage on market opportunities even in the region to say we can digitize supply chain, because again, electric bill of material landing in Vietnam is cheaper than an electric bill of material landing in India. Nobody can change that. It's still the case. logistics in terms of even last mile logistics is much more expensive in India than it is in Vietnam today, right? So those are the factors that still contribute. Like you said, only 2 companies have invested in India, and so moving that, the locomotive industry wants to change that. So moving that and saying we need to create some sort of a supply chain sitting in India to be able to change and adapt to the market opportunities that are available is extremely important. The other thing I'd say is that one more, another key point is that we need to create effective management systems. So the implementation of ERPs, implementation of skill sets, market opportunity, management expertise, creating that sort of digitization of a better market economy, of a better scaled economy is extremely important, and that's why it's important to formalize the sector. So I think it's key to look at how you can deliver, but it's also key to look at what you can drive to modify that delivery. Thank you, Mr. Mohan.
Right. So based on what you are saying, Ashita, I asked myself how much role we as SMEs have to play in this, and how much role the government can actually, because this looks like a part mindset problem of how we approach the task at hand.
I completely agree with you, and I think unless we ourselves as a cluster change and say we can drive the change, no matter what policy incentive the government will bring in, we will not see implementation on the ground grassroots level. Because we ourselves have to change and say, look, we can drive this, but we're set that our focus is market opportunity, and our focus is customer scalability and customer value addition. And then you'll see that drastically changing throughout the value chain.
True. Mr. Saboo, you mentioned 50% women workforce in China. I can point out to you that we are getting there. Leaving me out, we have 50% women on this panel as well. Okay, so we are working on it. We are getting there. And
you are following that in advance.
At least IPF has tried on that.
Yeah.
On that note, coming to you, Niti, manufacturing sector is undergoing a lot of changes, adoption of automation. So basically, new skill set of workers will be required. What are the kind of challenges you think MSMEs are facing? And if you would share with our audience, what are some of the probable solutions to work around this?
Yeah. So, you've been using the term automation multiple times, you've been talking about it. And we all realize that the terminology Industry 4.0 is not a speculation anymore, but it has become a reality for all of us, right? COVID specifically pushed almost every individual and organization to adopt technology. And I think that has preponed our adoption by at least 2 decades, if not more. Right? And with rapid development on the technology side, there are studies that show that about 69% of the jobs that exist today will not exist in the next 3 to 4 years' time. But that does not mean that many number of jobs will actually go. Maybe what will happen is that they'll be replaced by some other types of jobs and with different types of skill sets required. So I think as a team, we need to be prepared to what are the changes that are subtly coming into our workplaces, and how do we make our workforce be ready for those changes. AI is going to replace a lot of work that is happening at SMEs right now. Robotics is being introduced almost at every factory level. So how do we ensure that our workers and robots work hand in hand? Right? It's not that robots are going to replace workers completely. There are certain jobs that robots or AI or technology can just not replace. But having said that, maybe, there were some studies I was reading that an automobile manufacturing company planted 1 machine for every 4 workers, which means they installed 5,000 machines and replaced 20,000 workers, but they did not displace 20,000 workers. So these 20,000 workers then went on to do things that they wouldn't have thought they would be able to do. So I think it's important for us to start making investments, and I use the word investment and not expenditure, in upskilling our employees, our workforce. Probably, as small as our organizations are, I think we need to have at least 1 or 2 dedicated people who think about learning and development on a continuous basis, You could do it in-house, you could do it externally with experts who do it as a business model. But it's important that this becomes part of your 2021, 22, 23 plan, because unless we make those investments, we will not be able to get the right set of people, to work for us. Also, the other thing, I guess, as an industry, we need to plan to prepare workforce for a future requirement. There are various ways and means, that industries are looking at. How do I prepare people? So I'll give you a classic example of let's say FMCG. We have Godrej, we've got Panasonic. These are large names, but let's say Godrej is making investments and deploying apprentices at their plant for a period of 18 to 24 months. Maybe 20% of these apprentice trainees may get hired by Godrej eventually, but the balance 80% actually become trained workforce for other companies in the FMCG industry. The same thing could actually be, we could try and test it out within the SME sector, because it's easy to deploy. The government of India has lots of initiatives and reimbursement policies for such schemes. So it's not really about spending money, but probably about, how do I make small changes and small investments in my scheme of things, so that I can prepare people and not have the labor problem we keep hearing about. I mean, I was hearing everyone talk about why people are not investing in India and making investments in Vietnam. Maybe even in the Philippines, actually, for that matter, right? But it's only because the perception is that we are not able to provide the right workforce at the right time. So I think, we need to be the skill capital of the world. I mean, we are the youngest population. We are making huge investments in skill development, but the perception is so poor that we don't do quality job of even the little skilling that we are doing with the workforce. So I think if we are able to up our game on that side, I don't think we'll lag behind as far as the skills of our workforce is concerned. And when that happens, by default, productivity will improve, retention will improve. And it is really a chicken and egg situation all of us are in. If I don't make investments in skilling and upskilling, my productivity goes down. So I continue to stay small. But if my productivity is low, how do I make investments in skilling? How do I make investments in my people? So I think at some point we will have to get out of that chain and see how do I pull the plug and start doing at least one thing so that the other two or three fall in line.
Very true, very true. In today's discussion, this has come up multiple times: scale, quality, scale, efficiency, digitization. And I guess at some level, these are all interconnected with each other.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, yes.
On that cue, I think this is time for our second audience poll. We should have it on our screen now. I think we should have the results shortly. Okay, in the meantime, we wait for the results. We move on to our next topic of discussion. The interventions that we have seen from the government. Clearly, performance-linked incentives is one of the key interventions that we have seen. And there are like two views on this as well. Some economists have questioned the effectiveness of incentivizing incremental sales over 2019 base year, when current year GDP is already estimated by CARE to be down by 7.7 to 7.9%. Okay, so here are the results of the poll, and we see that only 21% has got a negative vote. So that's good. I think people clearly think that the government interventions are working. Great. And so they feel that 2019 base year, it's already down. How will you get incremental sales? A better sequencing would have been better. Maybe spend on direct benefit transfer, sort of boost up demand, and then have something like a PLI scheme. The counter view to that is that such long range plans take time. 4 to 6 months will go in freezing the plans and approving the applicants. Thereafter, another 12 to 18 months for production to start, and then the payouts should be at least 2 years away. So if you don't start now and wait for the perfect demand position, where you want to be, you will be at after 4 years rather than after 2 years. So coming to you, Ashita, what is your take on PLI scheme? How are you seeing it?
Well, first of all, Saket, I think the PLI scheme is extremely good at saying, okay, let's create an even ground, right? That's what it's about. It's about saying we know that you're disabled at this point in comparison to China and Vietnam, and so let's create an even ground. So it does its job. Is that enough? I don't think so. But it's a start, right? So the government has done a lot in 2020. It not only created the PLI scheme, it did the delayed payment portal. It created a digitized economy, scheme. It came out with a lot of schemes and incentives for SMEs to remain sustainable. Again, it didn't say, the government knows that it's not a question about surviving. If you have value addition, you will survive in the economy because it's a capitalistic economy. What the government said is, we know this is the first step we need to take, but the question we're asking is, okay, what next? Because it can't end at the PLI. It has to go to a sustainable advantage, a sustainable P&L. And so the 4 things that drive that are skilled manpower, technology, credit availability, and good management. And so I'm very interested to see what the government will do in 2021 and 2022 to kind of drive that through the economy. But, to remain globally competitive, you need good management and you need good policies. So it has to work hand in hand.
Sure. Mr. Saboo, very quickly, your thoughts on the PLI scheme?
Mr. Roy, I think the result will differ from sector to sector. Like in electrical equipment field, we already have excess manufacturing capacities. So the maximum benefit will be for the products which are not being produced up till now in India. So that is my view. There's certain measures like required to be addressed the financial disabilities, and the production linked scheme is one such key intervention by the government. And the significant measures include the development of industrial infrastructure, improving ease of doing business, more liquidity to business, skilling, rationalizing cost of power, developing world-class logistics. So these measures in the time to come will reduce the cost of production in the country.
Right.
So this has total budgetary outlay of over rupees 1.96 lakh crore, which is yet to be passed in the budget, but it's huge. And in the long term, this will really benefit. And overall, the scheme is designed to comprehensively cover not only sectors of its strength, but also sectors of opportunities where India can gain substantially in the coming years. And lastly, addressing the physical disabilities of companies and helping them achieve size and scale would allow Indian products to become competitive in global markets and lead to increase in exports. So that will be the really benefit in long run.
Right. Mr. Desai, merchandise export scheme is out. Rostel is extended till March 21. Eventually, it will be merged with ROTTEP. Any other specific interventions which EPC is looking from the government?
Yeah, EPC is looking for 2 interventions for SME sector, particularly for exports. One is creation of technological funds, like they did it in textile few years back, so that with that funds, small scale industries can upgrade their technology along with incorporation of digitalization and also automation. And this fund should be available. There should be some moratorium period, and then the repayment should be there on an installment basis, say for coming 5 years or so. Because technology upgradation, see, all this will not work unless and until SME upgrade that technology. Maybe with incorporation of automation, digitalization, management skill, you name it. So many factors are there.
Right.
And second point, very important, I'm talking from ground point of view, which MSME faces today, is the availability of finance. You see, people in China and others, they get very cheap finance. I should not use, but adequately priced. So what we have been asking government from long is give us LIBOR plus 2%. Whatever the LIBOR rate is there, so now LIBOR is say 2% or 1.5. So add 2% for Indian bank for their thing, and we let us get at 3.5 or 4%. Now it is interest subvention is there, but that is up to this March. Then after that, they have to come out. So availability of sustained, assured, uh, cheap finance for SME, and also to produce more so that we can export more of world-class quality product. These two, I think, is the one. And also to provide some funds for skilling up the labor force. You see, everybody have to skill. So if they have to send abroad for learning certain things, government should also provide some kind of support or hand holding for this. So these are few things which we require SME at the ground level.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Niti, 4 labor codes came into existence in 2020. What are the key takeaways, if you could briefly highlight maybe a couple, and how does it impact the cost competitiveness of the SME?
Yeah. So let me just step back and give perspective to everyone on what we had as a country, right? India has 44 central laws, 387 state labor laws, 67 central labor filings, 1,333 state labor filings, 674 central compliances, and 26,484 labor compliances. That was a volume of paperwork each one of us actually have to deal with, right? Which is obviously not easy. Now, the 4 labor codes that have been announced in 2020 are going to make huge impact across industries. When they get executed, I'm hoping they get executed in the right spirit. I don't see a reason why, because the labor codes that have been announced, right, just for everyone's reference, is the wage code, code on social security, code on occupational safety and health, and industrial relationship code. Now, each one of them are detailed enough to see what. So, like the wage code is actually subsuming three codes or 3 acts together, right? The code on occupational safety and health, I think, brings in about 6 or 7. The social security code brings about 9 acts and laws together. So I think in a way, it's kind of bringing things together and making it easy for industry to take this forward. A couple of things that one has to remember. Let's say, for example, the wage code. It actually starts to assume that national minimum wages will become reality for all of us. I personally don't think it's a good idea, but the central government is actually pushing the wage code, which says everyone will have a uniform code, or at max, they will actually have a zonal minimum wage, which is mandated by central government. The state government will have no say in defining minimum wages. So good, bad, ugly, only time will say, but I don't think you can have one minimum wage, because across the country will not be a good idea. Of course, there are things that, that define, let's say under the wage code, again, where everyone has to be paid by a certain time, right? There will be imprisonment only if an offense is committed repeatedly for 5 times, there's a math to it, right? And how the comp and benefits are defined. But the good thing, the upside is that everything is going digital, right? Your audits will happen digitally. Technology will decide who lands up at your office only if it's needed. So it's not one specific inspector coming to your factory premises every time, right? It depends on who it's getting tagged to. So I think all the payments are getting made digitally. So obviously those are the big upsides of all these codes that are being defined, because it will reduce, hoping it will reduce corruption in a big way. It will reduce the time to transaction, right? So there are various things. Let's say, for example, social security code. they have actually extended it to include gig workers and platform workers amongst all other workers, which means all of us actually get under the code on social security, right? Or the occupational safety and health. Specifically, I heard Ashita mention about a factory being of, more than 10 workers and then all possible compliances being expected to be followed. This particular code now defines a factory as at least 20 workers if you're using power, and 40 if you're not using power. Most SMEs will use power. So it's moved from 10 to 20 at least. So that movement does happen.
We are in
I
the right
also
direction,
heard,
possibly.
yes. I think that's a good thing. It has also taken cognizance of the fact, and Mr. Saboo was mentioning about participation of women workforce, right, across industries. The code of the occupations safety and health also defines in detail how women can work across establishments and for all kind of job roles. So I think inclusion of women workforce will be a huge impact, because for SMEs, taking in women for 8 hours of work, 9 hours of work, whatever the shift timings are, so basically we will expand our supply side on workforce. We don't have to depend on maybe just the male gender. We'll also start looking at the female gender. So I think that is a big upside these changes are going to bring across. Of course, the Industrial Relationship Code, which subsumes about 3 acts, is trying to bring in the IR perspective in the right manner. Most of them have not been executed, but my sense is that I think driven through technology, in the right direction, all payments have being done digitally, defining it for the industry as well as for the worker. I think there's a lot of clarity. In fact, 2019, there were certain, codes where the wage code had come up with a certain version and then it got upgraded to 2020. So there are changes, which means the government is actually thinking in the right direction. The whole thing about ease of doing business, how do you attract external, investments into the country. So I guess the thought process is there. It may probably take us some time to execute it in the right spirit and the right direction. But I think the points that were raised earlier as pain points, I'm assuming these codes will start helping ease out those pain points actually.
Absolutely. I think we've slightly overshot our time, so we'll run through the last part very quickly. The last part is basically to seek from you 2 suggestions or your wishes that you have for budget 2021. Very quickly. Mr. Saboo, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I fully agree with Mr. Mahesh Desai ji for investment in R&D. You see, to become truly Atmanirbhar, we need to adopt technology, innovation, and R&D. And we wish to suggest that Chapter 35 to be reintroduced for R&D incentives up to 200% for amount to be incurred in R&D. This shall strengthen our MSME unit, and there is no need to give finance separately. The second will be MSME. I just don't agree with Mahesh ji on one thing, that is you require finance. Why MSME requires finance? We don't require any funding from the banks or anywhere. You only pay us in 45 days. That is the only thing we require. Why to borrow to pay the interest? They are eating out our profits. So MSME, government has come up with MSME Act 2006, which specifies that 45 days credit period for the recipient of any goods or services to pay to the MSME supplier, including interest. So that has to be implemented in true sense. And if it gets implemented, this can be implemented by government can give incentives to the companies who pay in time.
Right.
Or they can provide income tax benefit to those companies so that it will get implemented. Thank you. These are the 2 points.
Mr. Desai, your 2 suggestions?
My 2 suggestions are implementations of road tab. They have already implemented the road tab, but they have given only 0.1%, 0.5% incentive for all the products. When we have been attending this meeting with the government, and we are also to Pillai committee, where we have submitted our submissions, and if this is implemented, then the refund to us, to the industry as such, will be at least more than 3% to 4%, because all the taxes, right from the mining to the final transportation, where they suffer taxes, if they are computed, they are going to 6 to 7%. We have done for engineering industry this, but let us wait for the government. So in this budget, if they can provide some funds for road tab, so our life will become little easy in exports. That is one thing. Second thing is, we are all firm believer of technology upgradation. If we don't upgrade ourselves today, our future is, I cannot forecast the future, because many like our casting industry, gray iron casting, forging industry, they are 30 years back, 40 years back. So we have to upgrade all these. For this, we need funds. We have to import some good machine from abroad initially, or we have to buy if they are made in India. For that, we need some support. We need funds so that we can buy the new machines, and we can also pay to the government in due course. That is technology upgradation, adoption of automation and digitalization at every stage of production, right from the procurement to the final compliances to the government departments. So these are the two things which I need support from the government. MSME on themselves with their meager resources. See, I agree with Mr. Saboo, but Mr. Saboo, which PSU is paying in 30 days or 45 days?
That's a completely different topic, sir. We'll keep it for another day. We are completely run out of time.
That is
if
why
I can just quickly come to...
that is why we need...
That is why the TREADS platform is there. I think once the government mandates people to get on the TREADS platform, a lot of these problems probably will get sorted out.
I know, I am aware about it. I am also aware about the time factor and the limitations of our discussion very well. But facts are facts, realities are realities, and we face every day in and out. Whatever sweet talk we may talk here, whatever good English language we may deploy, as I say, Queen's language, but the facts remain facts. Tomorrow morning, when we all go to our office, our factory, they are standing there or they are sitting on our table. So let us face the facts also. And I am a first generation technocrat surviving MSME sector from last 55 years.
That is,
so
in itself is an achievement, I guess.
No, it's not an achievement. It's I know what are the factors, and I have come across the full circle. Anyhow, this has nothing to do with today's discussion, but such forums should face the reality of that and should bring out the... I have not touched many other factors, I know, but we should bring out the reality. We should tell our recommendations should consist of that. Those reality also, not goody things, what IAS officer likes there. He's only a generalist, we are specialists here. We should bring it.
Sure.
We cannot keep quiet here. And IBF is the industrial product finder. They should also find and report to the government. Thank you very much. So, sorry for my little burst, but I am a man of ground reality, and we should work on ground reality.
Thank you.
I
Niti,
appreciate
your 2 bits, please.
Huh?
Niti, your 2 suggestions.
I think one thing that I would like to put forth to the government to keep in mind is that small cities and small industries are big job creators. I think we have to work with the smaller cities and industries to ensure how we can create more formal employment and or decent wage employment. I think that's one thing that I would like to put on the table. The second thing which is linked is really about infrastructure. We have been talking about automation, we've been talking about digital, remote learning, we've been doing a lot of things. One thing that has been a binding constraint is basic internet connectivity to the last mile audience. I think if we are able to get that out, a lot of things about connectivity, I think even transport, logistics, supply chain, I think a lot of things will probably get resolved. And from my perspective, I think virtual learning, digital learning, remote access to data, I think a lot of that will come in place if the last mile infrastructure is developed. Given the fact that the technology adoption has speeded up multifold in the last 1 year, I think it is high time the government thinks about upgrading our technology infrastructure in the country.
Sure.
Just my 2 bits.
Thank you. So we've completely run out of time. I think I'll just conclude our session here. I think we are as a result of the pandemic, I think we are seeing inflationary pressure on the commodities, and that's why the gap between the asset prices and the real economy is widening. And demand creation will remain a force. We have seen in the infra space, some of the large corporates are deleveraging through InvITs and REITs. Probably the government may look for the same route of monetization for some of the state-owned assets. With this will come the problem of fiscal management, as Madan mentioned earlier, and probably national infrastructure pipeline should get top priority. Our guess is that the interest rates is the best at which we are seeing, and the demand boost will come through greater liquidity. And probably in this budget, the government will look at a different approach for fiscal management. Instead of a yearly fiscal deficit target, they may look at a 2 to 3 year trajectory. And that would mean also a more realistic disinvestment approach. We will wait and see what the budget lays before us, and the roadmap for becoming a $5 trillion economy. The vaccine drive in the country will start very shortly. We hope and pray that it is super successful and we can all bounce back. Thank you to all the panelists for sharing their views and taking the time out. We thank the audience for here being with us. And lastly, I thank Team IPF for arranging this program. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a very good evening.
Okay, just one point.
Thank you, Mr. Roy. Thank you, IPF.
One thing I'd like to add is I think one more thing we'd like to see is a simplified GST with an effective GST rate of about 2 to 3 slabs, so that an exemption at that level could mean better financial availability and better formalization of the entire sector. So I completely agree with all the panelists.
Sure. I think we all do.
Thank
you, everybody.
Thank you, Cycle. Thank you, IPF. Thank you.
Handing over back to you, Rakesh.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rakesh.
You handle all of us very well, Cycle.
Thank you, Rakesh. Okay.
So thank you, Saikatra, and all the panelists for their very informative and engaging discussion. I would now like to call upon our next speaker, Mr. Gagandeep Singh, Manager SME for Western Region of National Stock Exchange. Mr. Singh has hands-on experience in the field of trade operations, settlements, insurance, credit rating of SMEs, customer service, and business development. Over to you, Mr. Singh, for your address.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rao, and it's a pleasure to be a part of the IPF forum today. I was witnessing a beautiful panel discussion before me, and very well jotted points stated by all the panelists. And there was a reference given to the finance portion that what kind of finance is available. And I guess Mr. Saboo spoke about implementation of 45 days period for getting the payments back from our vendors. And again, Mr. Roy brought out a very beautiful point about the TREADS platform. NSE along with the SIGBI, of course, has its own platform related to the TREADS. And I guess once it is mandated for all the large scale companies and SMEs to come together on the platform, I guess this problem may find a little bit of a solution for their problems. Apart from this, there is another solution that the growing SMEs of our country can look forward to, and that is the listing on the stock market. This is one of the very beautiful platforms for growing SMEs to venture themselves into the capital markets and seek where they are placed in the global market as well. See, from a product perspective, from a marketing perspective, all the promoters and all the companies would know where they are placed, right? From a market perspective, capital market perspective, it is a little different to understand the entire ballgame of, finding your value for your own equity, where our equity is placed and what is the value that we can derive from the market. See, all the big companies were small someday, right? They started maybe from their own drawing rooms, from their own backyards. But today, they have found their way, and it has always been the promoter's prerogative to give a direction to the company. But we always say that SMEs, the promoters of the SME, are one-man army. But somewhere, we need to build that army around us as well. Decentralized way of operations is a very beautiful way of running the businesses. And I'm very happy to say that in the last 15 to 20 years, we have seen this trend coming into our market and, in the Indian sphere, which is welcoming and, helping the promoters grow their business. Looking at from a finance perspective, I guess listing is a very beautiful way to unleash our own value of the equity, see for the promoters where they are standing, because there are many benefits around it. My topic was today was to help you understand the benefits of the listing on the platform. One of the biggest advantage of any company which is getting listed is actually the exposure to the global world. A company may be doing a beautiful business in let's say a small place like Ichalkaranji in Maharashtra, right? But there may be an investor wanting to invest in their business, but there is no platform to bring them together. Once the equity is available on the capital market, investors from across the globe can come and participate in the growth story of the company. So that is, again, a very interesting part, that you really need not go out and spend so much of money and, finding more and more consultants for yourself. Once the equity is listed on the stock market, it is visible to everybody. Every investor is allowed to come and invest on the stock markets, which can help propel the growth of the company. Promoters have always put in their own money. They have invested money from their own friends and family. They have made profits, again plowed them back in the business and grown. But to take a step ahead and see where they can do wonders for themselves, I guess capital markets is a real eye-opener for a lot of companies. We have seen, if I'm not wrong, in our Indian capital market, there's a separate platform for the SMEs, and cumulatively, I guess around 500 plus companies have listed so far from the SME perspective. They have collectively raised around 5,000 plus crore rupees so far, both on NSE and BSE together. And that shows the real potential of the SMEs, the real trajectory of the investors who are willing to come forward and support the SME sector and list on the stock markets. One of the, again, a very important factor which helps the companies grow to another level is also compliances. See, as a compliant company, we'll always know where we are standing, how well we are placed, and how soon can we go ahead and raise funds from the market. So compliance plays a very important factor. We all know post demonetization, a lot of things changed for our economy, for the SME sector. But if you see, if you take our experience, put into together, we saw a lot of companies coming out with more IPOs post that particular instant. The reason for that may be because a lot of business which was in cash got converted into the books, and that helped them substantially grow their books on the face value itself. And that is, I guess, something that helped them grow money through the equity value of the company on the stock markets. So it is important for the SMEs to know where we are standing, what kind of push is required in terms of decentralizing their operations, in terms of the global exposure, in terms of going out of their own state, going local as well. So it is important for them to understand where we are standing, and from a capital market perspective, see what kind of equity can be derived and what is the value proposition that can be that can act as a benefit for the company. So we all really need to help the growing SME sector as promoters, as financial consultants. It is our duty to support the SME sector. Of course, government is coming out with various schemes and opportunities for SMEs to help them grow. Let us also put in our efforts to showcase them, how capital market can also help them grow. so with this, I would just wanted to, thank the IPF forum and the team and all the awardees who would be getting the rewards later tonight. That most of the companies who have, made their trademark on the global platform is not only just through their own zeal and own dirt, they also need to showcase themselves, and a right set of platform is what really helps you. So let's build the Indian economy, let's make ourselves more sustainable, let's look forward to for more lucrative ways, both in terms of technology and also in terms of finance availability. As the catalyst to the SME growth story, exchanges are always there. I'm very happy that IPF has taken the prerogative to start off this new year on a good note, to understand where we are standing and can grow forward from here on. So thank you so much for having us over here. Rakesh ji, over to you from here on. And if there is any query, any questions, we are always open to discussions from here on.
Thank you, Mr. Gagandeep Singh, for your informative speech about option of listing to raise fund for SMEs. With no further delay, I would now call upon Mr. Pratap Patode, editor of IPF and founder and president of First Construction Council, for his welcome address and also the unveiling of IPF Annual 2021.
Thank you, Rakesh. So welcome to the 4th Industrial Product Finder Industrial Excellence Forum, organized by SAP Info Global Group. But before I say anything further, let me wish everyone a happy Pongal, happy Makar Sankranti, happy Lohri, happy Bihu to all viewers and listeners. I think we have begun on some festive note, and Industrial Product Finder has also entered its 50th year since its establishment in 1972. Now, India has close to 6.8 million Udyog Aadhaar registered MSMEs and another 63 million MSMEs. These constitute almost 45% of the manufacturing output, 95% of the number of industrial units, 48% of the exports, and 35% of the GDP. And they employ 110 million people, 11 crores, making MSMEs the largest source of employment after the agriculture sector. Now, I think we have had fabulous experts on our panels who have given various insights on various issues affecting the SME sector. And given the importance, as I just said, of its contribution to the GDP, employment, exports, manufacturing output, I think the government obviously needs to take a very substantial look at how they can revive it. Because based on the revival of the MSME sector lies the recovery of Indian economy. Technology has obviously come to the forefront during this pandemic. Challenges in operations are being served by technological adoptions everywhere. Digital platforms offer equal opportunities to the MSME sectors. So the digital platforms need to be served to everybody, and I think the government is doing a good job in terms of offering the National Optic Fiber Network, which enables SMEs located anywhere in the country to access whether it is the e-marketplaces for quoting their products on the e-forums of PSUs, or whether it is e-marketplaces, agri-marketplaces, and so on and so forth. So the digital world requires two particular components, and they somehow become two obstacles. One is knowledge and the other is capital. So in order to create the equal opportunity, the government must work towards lowering the total cost of the digital platform. So how can the cost be lowered? How can IT solution providers provide hardware and software and digital services across the country so that the accessibility of this platform itself does not become a hindrance to the MSMEs? Because the future lies on how MSMEs can actually utilize the digital platform in a robust manner. Lack of knowledge in terms of ability to use, or lack of capital in terms of having access to this, will be a death knell for the MSME and SME, because this is the way you can jump forward in terms of growth. Now that we know that the digital platform has the key to the future. Now, compliance regulation, as one of our panelists previously indicated, I've got thousands and thousands of compliances all around the country. Labor law, company law, multiple state laws, and there is not a single comprehensive list that lays out all the compliances. This has constantly proven to be a big deterrent for people wanting to start a business in India. Now, the UP government has recently unveiled a program with a single window for NOCs from 29 departments and power connections up to 20 kilowatt within 3 days of filing an application. Once an applicant makes a declaration of intent to the district level nodal agency, he would receive an acknowledgement within 72 hours, which will be enough for the applicant to set up the unit. And the declaration of intent has to be filed online through the Nivesh Mitra portal. So states are taking the leap forward. We've seen the labor migration issue which occurred, and obviously UP has seen that it has labor. It needs to take care of the labor laws. It needs to provide plug and play kind of facilities and services, and it is moving in this direction with this kind of an ease of doing business for entrepreneurs. Many other states are also following suit, and I think there is going to be a competition within states as to which state can draw more capital, draw more investment, draw more entrepreneurs and enterprises. Capital is the other bane for MSMEs, as the last panel discussion unveiled. Now, extension of invoice financing to the MSME and SME sector can be a great boon. You can use threads of National Stock Exchange, but somehow we need to go towards a situation where an invoice can be very easily financed so that SMEs can draw working capital very easily to cover short-term expenses. The launch of Nirvik or Niryat Vikas Yojana scheme introduces MSME sector to higher export credit disbursement. It also provides reduced premium and increased insurance cover for the SME sector in India for 2021. It introduces a scheme to give subordinate debt that can act as quasi-equity to support MSME entrepreneurs. Some time ago, we also recommended that I think the MSME sector also warrants a qualification into provision of equity funding. And the equity funding can be on a debenture which is convertible into equity at a later date. This way it remains debt for some time and is easily able to convert to equity when such a time arises for the SME to grow forward without the debt becoming a burden for its growth. It has been proved that whenever entrepreneurs are given a conducive environment, they are capable of turning a crisis into an opportunity. Like when the country needed millions of personal protective equipment, PPE kits, for its healthcare workers fighting COVID, many companies ramped up production in no time. I mean, India was actually relying mostly on imported PPE kits with hardly any local supply chain base. And within a few months, the supply chain was established. And today India is the second largest manufacturer of PPE suits in the world. Similarly, at Industrial Product Finder, we've been able to bring forth to our readers webinar and e-conferences on subjects like restarting industrial enterprises during COVID, safety and security, opportunities and challenges in exports, buyer-seller meetings with defense, steel, power, railways, and meetings with large corporates like Vedanta, L&T Power, NTPC, Hindustan Aeronautics, etc. Our IPF online platform offers 77,000 products where manufacturers are able to post their products and receive inquiries. Our website receives 35% visitors from overseas. While great nation building work is taking place in India today, adequate focus on MSME and SME sector can help restore our GDP growth much faster and provide employment to millions, and thereby restore our place as a powerful nation to be in the coming years. Domestic defense production, the advent of the PLI scheme, consolidation of labor codes, Atmanirbhar Bharat, etc. are all good steps, and we are looking forward to our finance minister's never before budget. We are honored to have with us Shri Devendra Singh, Additional Secretary, MSME Ministry and Development Commissioner, Ministry of Micro, Small, Medium Enterprises, and Dr. Ravi P. Singh, Secretary General, Quality Council of India. The awardees who will be recognized today are truly deserving, as they have gone through an extensive jury selection process. Our 49th IPF annual issue being released today continues to be a mega issue with over 240 products and over 20 experts discussing the outlook for 2021. Don't miss it. It has a cover story on the rebuilding of the manufacturing sector. To get your copy, call 81086 03000. I repeat, 81086 03000. And now, over to the launch of the 49th IPF annual issue. Thank you. Over to Rakesh.
Thank you, Mr. Pratap Patode, for your excellent speech. Now, moving on to our next agenda on the table is going to be IPF Industrial Excellence Awards. As it is said, it's very easy to put your opinion or give your opinion, but it's very difficult to select a winner among the best. IPF Industrial Excellence Awards this year has faced a similar daunting task, which our esteemed jury members had handled efficiently. Let us facilitate our jury members who took their valuable time to select the winners of this year's IPF Industrial Excellence Awards. Members for this year's jury included Dr. B. Sheshnath, CEO and MD, Volvo Oil, Fluid Power India Private Limited, Dr. Sharmila Amin, MD, Bertling Logistics India Private Limited, Professor R. Jayaraman, Head Capstone Projects, Bhavan's SP Jain Institute of Management and Research, Mr. Rajesh Nath, MD, VDMA India, Mr. Saikat Roy, Director, West Region, KR Rating Limited, Mr. Srinivas Sirupa, Head Supply Chain Management, L&T Power, Mr. Subodh Jindal, Global CEO, Steer Engineering, Mr. Subba Bangera, Director, PPMI, Plastic Machinery Manufacturers Association of India, Mr. J. Pandey, Deputy Director General, IEEMA, Indian Electricals and Electronics Manufacturers Association, Mr. Vijayan Chaudhary, Global Procurement Head, Tata Technologies, and Mr. Vikas Bajaj, President, Association of Indian Forging Industry. We are grateful to each and every one of our jury members for their contribution towards selecting our winners today. With this, we'll begin the proceedings of our 5th IPF Industrial Excellence Awards, which will be followed by the address of our guests of honor for tonight's events. And now we'll play our IPF awards.
We request everyone to stay tuned so that you don't miss our Story Awards evening starting now. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening and a warm welcome to all of you. I am Nazneen Madan, and on behalf of the SF Info Global Group, I'm delighted that you all could join us for the 5th IPF Industrial Excellence Awards. Since we cannot celebrate this esteemed gathering with our industry fraternity in person, like we've been doing for the past 4 years, we present to you the 5th IPF Industrial Excellence Awards online. For those of you posting on social media, please use hashtag IPF 2021. Let us begin for what you all have gathered here. The awards will be given in the 6 categories such as Fastest Growing Companies Awards, Product Excellence, Promising Startup of the Year, Promising Female Entrepreneur of the Year, Entrepreneur of the Year Female, Entrepreneur of the Year Male. We will start with the Fastest Growing Companies Awards. The first IPF Fastest Growing Company Award in the Agriculture and Food Processing Large category goes to Nath Biogenes India Limited. Congratulations, Mr. Kagliwal. The second IPF Fastest Growing Company Award in the Agriculture and Food Processing Medium category goes to Cupid Limited. Congratulations, Mr. Garg. The IPF Fastest Growing Company Award in the Agriculture and Food Processing Small category goes to Oceanic Foods Limited. Congratulations, Mr. Patel. The IPF Fastest Growing Company Award in the Auto Ancillary Large category goes to Precision Camshafts Limited. Congratulations, Mr. Shah. The IPF Fastest Growing Company Award in the Electrical and Electronics Small category goes to Ultra Wiring Connectivity System Limited. Congratulations, Mr. Mathur. The IPF Fastest Growing Company Award in the Engineering Medium category goes to Tejo Engineering Limited. Congratulations, Mr. George. The IPF Fastest Growing Company Award in the Engineering Small category goes to Dhanaprakash Industrial Corporation. Congratulations, Mr. Navangul. The IPF Fastest Growing Company Award in the Fertilizer and Chemical Small category goes to Chem Crux Enterprises Limited. Congratulations, Mr. Marathe. The IPF Fastest Growing Company Award in the Pharma Medium category goes to Syncom Formulations India Limited. Congratulations to both of you. The IPF Fastest Growing Company Award in the Plastic, Paper and Packaging Large category goes to MB Industries Limited. Congratulations, Mr. Appalwar. The IPF Fastest Growing Company Award in the Plastic, Paper and Packaging Medium category goes to Captain Polyplast Limited. Congratulations, Mr. Kichadia. The IPF Fastest Growing Company Award in the Plastic, Paper and Packaging Small category goes to National Plastic Technologies Limited. Congratulations, Mr. Parak. This is the last award in the IPF Fastest Growing Company category. The award for the IPF Fastest Growing Company in the Steel and Non-Ferrous Metals Small category goes to Bansal Roofing Products Limited. Congratulations, Mr. Gupta. Ladies and gentlemen, now let us begin with our next set of awards. That is the IPF Product Excellence Awards. Let us begin with the first award category, Electrical and Electronic Equipment. We have two winners in this category. The first winner in this category is Stellar Gastronom Private Limited for its Stellar Blast Freezer. Congratulations, Mr. Khanna. The second winner of the IPF Product Excellence Award in the Electrical and Electronic Equipment category is Washmatic India Private Limited for its UV30 Conveyor Sterilizer. Congratulations, Mr. George. The winner of the IPF Product Excellence Award in the Hydraulics and Pneumatics category is Mercury Pneumatics Private Limited for its Air Booster. Congratulations, Mr. Nraskina. The winner of the IPF Product Excellence Award in the Machine Tools category is Maharashtra Engineers for its CNC-operated crankshaft recentering SPM. Congratulations, Mr. Wadikar. There are two winners of the IPF Product Excellence Award in the Material Handling and Logistics category. The first winner is Jay Equipment and Systems Private Limited for its electric pallet truck. Congratulations, Mr. Karelia. The second winner of the IPF Product Excellence Award in the Material Handling and Logistics category is Nikka Instrumentation Private Limited and HBC Radiomatic India Private Limited for its wireless automation of locomotive. Congratulations, Mr. Thakar. We have two winners for the IPF Product Excellence Award in the Special Mentions category. The first winner is Jonet Technologies Private Limited for its Jonet NPNT UT.0, a hardware that ensures regulatory compliance of drones. Congratulations, Mr. Livingstone. The second winner of the IPF Product Excellence Award in the Special Mentions category is Surface Modification Technologies Private Limited for its Physical Vapor Deposited PVD coatings for textile industry. Congratulations, Mr. Matre. Let us now look at IPF Promising Startup of the Year Award. The first winner in this category is CNC Laser Engineering Private Limited. Congratulations, Mr. Savan. The second winner of the IPF Promising Startup of the Year Award is Dhruv Agro Industries. Mr. Dhyaneshwar Salunke, Managing Partner, receives the award. Congratulations, Mr. Salunke. Ladies and gentlemen, let us move on to the final category. IPF Entrepreneur of the Year. The first award of Promising Entrepreneur of the Year Female goes to Miss Sheetal Talati Mehta, owner Pushpa Industries. Congratulations, Miss Mehta. Let us move on to the IPF Entrepreneur of the Year Female Award, and the winner is Miss Smita Yashwant Gesas, Chairperson and MD, Minilec India Private Limited. Congratulations, Miss Gesas. The final award of tonight is for IPF Entrepreneur of the Year Male, and the award goes to Mr. Ramesh Arora, Managing Director, Quality Pharmaceuticals Limited. Congratulations, Mr. Arora. We are done with our awards, and we will now request our guests of honor to share a few words with us. Our first guest for tonight is Mr. Devendra Kumar Singh, Additional Secretary, MSME Ministry and Development Commissioner, MSME, Government of India. Before Mr. Singh shares his thoughts, let me take you through his profile quickly. He is a modern bureaucrat with vision. During his stint in Directorate General of Foreign Trade, he was assigned the work related to the formulation of foreign trade policy to enhance transparency, enhance e-governance, greater trade facilitation, digitalization from start to end of the process chain, which reflects his wholesome approach in line with the concept of the Government of India in the foreign trade governance, so as to achieve a larger objective of bringing national interest in focus. Mr. Singh was also the member secretary of the second task force on transaction cost in exports, which is aimed to evolve a strategy towards reducing transaction costs, specifically in terms of export and import. I now request Mr. Devendra Kumar Singh to kindly grace the occasion.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Pratap Harodia, Founder and Editor-in-Chief, Mrs. Padode, awardees, winners, other dignitaries, special invitees, my dear friends. It is indeed a pleasure for me, an honor for me to participate in this prestigious program where Industrial Excellence Forum 2021 is recognizing excellence. This program is important because this is being organized during a period which is full of surprises, disruptions and crisis. But organization of such events in such a successful manner indicates the resilience of our society and the desire of human being to come over any crisis and any difficulties in life. These are unprecedented times of COVID, and this period has taught us many lessons. And if I reflect during this last 7 to 8 months, I can proudly say, which gives us a sense of satisfaction, that how industry has responded well even during this crisis. And especially MSMEs, they have responded well in handling the crisis, from the manufacturing of PPE kit to the mask to the sanitizers and whatever required for the society, they have responded well. So there is a need to recognize such insight in us. There is a need to recognize excellence. There is a need to recognize innovations and technology. And functions like this, where such talents are recognized, is always a welcome initiative. And I congratulate IPF for this, and I compliment all the award-winning entrepreneurs on this occasion. The journey of entrepreneurship is long. Many times it is very tough. When a new idea is born, the entrepreneur looks for ideas, solutions, and he always look for some support. And at that point of time, if some support is given in terms of finding solutions, finding right equipments, finding right technology, it helps. And I am sure that IPF during the last 48 years has been able to contribute significantly in that direction. I also understand that this is the 5th year of this award, and they have recognized such brilliant people in the past, and probably they will continue in this venture. Technology is one of the most important aspect. Adopting technology is now not an option. We have to adopt technology, and we have to change probably our mindsets, our attitude. And unless until we adopt technology, we may not become competitive. Our product, our innovative ideas may not really see the light of day and may not be able to market those products if we are not cost competitive. So therefore, in order to do so, there is a need to adopt technology in different way, not only at the time of selection of machinery, which is technology compliant, but also in designing of the product. Many times we have to keep consumers in mind, their preferences, and to make appropriate changes in our product so that there is a demand in the market. And such steps, may be small, helps in the entrepreneurs to grow. I would also like to take this opportunity to convey through you and all your participants that Ministry of MSME has taken various initiatives during this period. Like we have started a UCAM registration after the adoption of new criteria for the classification of micro, medium and small enterprises. And now there is tremendous opportunity to grow. There is a scope for a lot of investment to bring a lot of new ideas in this sector and to take benefit of different schemes of our ministry. We have incubation schemes, we have design schemes, we have schemes to support capital subsidy in investment, we have schemes to support interest subvention. Besides the government's new initiatives, which is broadly we termed as Atmanirbhar Bharat. As per that scheme, government announced emergency credit line, guarantee free credit, fund of fund and subordinate debt schemes. These schemes has helped significantly for the survival of our industry. And on this occasion, I would like to assure that all possible help from us will be always available. Once again, I congratulate all the awardees in different categories for winning these awards, and I am sure that they will continue to look for higher excellence in their journey to entrepreneurship, and let them become the dominant player of this economy. I wish all of best to all of them and to all of you. in this journey. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you, Mr. Devendra Kumar Singh, for your insight and kind words. Our second guest of honor for IPF Industrial Excellence Forum 2021 is Dr. Ravi P. Singh, Secretary General, Quality Council of India. Before Dr. Singh shares his thoughts, let me take you through Dr. Singh's achievements. He is a man who believes quality is more of a character than a process. Dr. Ravi Singh aims to improve quality consciousness at all levels, be it healthcare, education industry, or social sector. He is steering a quality movement in the country at individual and organization level through independent boards of accreditation like NABH, NABCB, NABET, and NBQP, headed by CEOs. Dr. Ravi Singh deals with quality assurance mechanisms in products, processes, and services in sectors like education, healthcare, skills, manufacturing, public services, etc. His department is part of international accreditation bodies like IAF, PAC, etc. He is often described as a reformist, team builder, and motivator. I now request our guest of honor, Dr. Ravi P. Singh, to share his insight.
Welcome to the IPF Industrial Excellence Forum of 2021. I am very pleased to be here with you today, primarily because both IPF as well as Quality Council of India has been working for a long time in spreading the message of quality in manufacturing. I am extremely happy to be a part of this forum today because in its own ways, IPF is also trying to sensitize people towards quality in manufacturing. You all know that the recent call of the Prime Minister of India about Atmanirbhar Bharat as well as vocal for local is giving a fillip to manufacturing within the country in a very quality conscious manner. The government of India has recently started Udyog Manthan, a 42-day program in which the manufacturers as well as the services sector and beyond that even the government services is participating in order to provide a very thorough discussion on how the manufacturing within the country can improve, how the productivity within the country can improve, and how India can help in making its products for the world. You all know how some of the countries who are known for quality, whether it is Japan or Europe or US, has gone on the mission of quality and have succeeded in doing so primarily by helping their industrial organizations to invest on quality. In my opinion, within India, there has been a long standing myth about cost versus quality. People have not realized so far that eventually quality is what sustains you in any kind of manner and in any kind of the industrial organization that wants to succeed and become progressive. During this pandemic time, almost all of 2020, what we have seen is that people have realized that quality is what is going to sustain you in the market. The Indian consumer has become very conscious about quality, and therefore they have started embracing only those products which are somehow able to maintain the quality which is desired from the consumers. We have plenty of examples, whether it is the Indian pharma sector, whether it is the auto sector, whether it is the PP or the textile sector, whether it is in fact, any sector that you can see of, household items, LED bulbs, everywhere India has been able to buck the trend of import substitution through its own products, and also in energy sufficiency, the solar generation, the wind generation, and even the services that we see today, whether it is in the digital payment, whether it is in the roads and construction, India has gone leaps and bounds ahead by concentrating on quality. And therefore, we all must understand that it is the quality that is going to sustain. There are a lot of programs that QCI has started. For example, you might have heard about the Honorable Prime Minister talking about the zero defect, zero effect. The Quality Council of India has a standard which is defining zero defect, zero effect in the manufacturing sector. MSME, which is one of the vehicle for development of the manufacturing sector, has embraced zero defect, zero effect in a manner that we have not seen earlier. And what we have seen is that people have somehow started to work slowly on precision equipments rather than basic equipments, and that is where we want manufacturing to concentrate. We also want that today or tomorrow we will have to create a system by which digital factories can be built, and we as an organization and the government is able to see that if there is any demand which exists in the international market, our manufacturing can be slowly and strategically shifted towards producing that product. What we have seen is that in PPE sector itself, we had the capacity of 10,000 or 20,000 PPE kits every day, but eventually government started shifting the big manufacturers to produce PPE kits, and eventually we had almost 1 million PPE kits being produced by big manufacturing textile sector, and we were surplus capacity within the country and we started exporting it. While exporting, it was important for us to adhere to the international standards, and that is where the industry played a very crucial role along with all the standard setting institutions as well as the government, in order to make everybody aware that if you want to export your product outside the country, you will have to make things in a manner which cannot return from the international market. And that is where QCI is playing a very important role. You know, standard setting is the first vehicle on which a good product is made, but then after that the conformity assessment of that product, whether it is testing, whether it is certification, also has to follow the international norms, and therefore we have within us organizations like National Accreditation Board for Certification Bodies and the National Accreditation Board for Calibration and Testing Laboratories, who do the conformity assessment of products. Slowly we are also moving towards making standards or making testing standards protocols for the entire product rather than test method based. And what we have seen is that in, for example, in some very sunshine sectors, we had the toys mystery shopping that we did, and we found out that almost 2/3 of the products which were imported by India in the toys sector from neighboring countries were deficient in quality. Our manufacturers know about all these things, but they somehow could not compete with a cost that was coming into India. Now people have started realizing that we must build trust in the Indian product, in the brand India that we have been trying to create, and unless and until you have the trust on that brand which is Indian, we would not be able to compete in within India or as well outside India. Nations and economies have competed internationally only by having trust in their own brand. And therefore, I through this platform invite you to have that trust on the Indian manufacturers. And once we do that, we will become a developed country with quality and productivity as the central theme on which this country is built. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi Singh. That is all from our side. I thank all of you for your time and support and for making this gathering so special. A special thank you to our supporting partners. Stay safe. Goodbye.
With this, we come to an end of the first IPF Industrial Excellence Forum 2021. We hope you all had a good time today. I would like to thank our eminent speakers and guests for sharing their valuable insight. We would also like to congratulate all the winners of IPF Industrial Excellence Awards and thank the jury for selecting the winners. We are grateful to our exchange partner, National Stock Exchange, and a knowledge partner, KR Ratings. We would once again like to express our gratitude to our association partners, Indian Institute of Welding, Federation of Associations of Maharashtra, Manufacturers Association of IT, that is MIT, and AIAI, All India Association of Industries. Besides, we would like to thank media partners, IPF, the Indian Textile Journal, and Automotive Product Finder. Finally, we would like to thank the wonderful audience for making this event a grand success. Stay safe and good night.